Looks like we're live. Been a few seconds here. I'm trying to, oh shit, trying to get the links into Clint. Doesn't look like Clint's going to be again with us again tonight. He's got to, it's probably loud. He's got some work and stuff he's got to get done on his vehicle. So it's like it'll be just us again. But a man's got to do what a man's got to do, so I understand. Get my little list out here and get these links shared where everybody trickles in. Hope everybody's having a good week. You just bear with me a few minutes and we'll have these links shared and we can chat for a little bit. Hopefully we'll have some questions and some newcomers. That's always nice. So if you're just getting in here, bear with me a minute. It won't take long. I'm getting better at this actually. Through repetition. That'll take about 5 minutes, but still it's more than 5. I wish I could just go down through and click and be done. I don't understand why some links I can do that and some I have to go back and have to do manually like this. But we'll get through it. We'll see how many they'll let me share. That's always interesting. Sometimes it's a little task finding these all in my groups. But it shouldn't take too long. So just bear with us. Won't take long. I'm about halfway there. So if you all have a group that you are in, I failed to mention this before, but if there's a Shine group that you're in that I'm not posting to and you think it'd be beneficial for the group, or if you have a group that you would like me to share my stream with, get up with me and let me know. I'd be happy to include it in my list. Now there's a lot of groups on there, so I've just basically streamed the ones that I'm familiar with and that are fairly visible, but I know there's a lot of private groups on there as well that I might not be streaming to. So if you're a member or if you have a group and you'd like for me to add your group to my list, let me know. Be happy to add it. Definitely be happy to add it. Because it helps cut down on some of the traffic too in the group. Maybe some questions. They can watch the videos and it might attract people to your group too. So if you'd like for me to stream to it, I'd be more than happy to put you on the list. Yeah, let's see how many more I can get. I'm getting to the point now where it's toss up. Damn, didn't get many this time. Didn't get Mike Hatley's group. Man. Usually I get past there. Yes, that's not good. Usually I get way past there. Let's see. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that's better than the 10 they normally give. So I guess I'd take it as a W. What's going on, Patty? Good to see you, brother. What's up, JJ? Greetings. Siamantis. Okay. Shine Alchemist. Okay. I was trying to figure, is that Scientologist? That's what we're Scientologists. Scientology. What's going on, Stephen? Good to see you, brother. What's up, old Sheen? If there's probably cops in every group, and hell, there's a lot of cops that are out there, making their own and shining and buying shine. It's cops. I'm not worried about any of it really. I'm just offering advice for people that can distill legally, and it's legal in a lot of places, statewide and federally. So I can't be responsible if they're doing it legally or not legally. So I'm just sharing info. So I don't really care. Yeah, I know, brother. What's up, Curtis? Good to see you, brother. No, no, not really. It's sometimes it'll smell good and like bread cooking, and sometimes it's not gonna have much odor at all, and sometimes it'll smell foul. Sometimes it'll even smell like vomit, depending on their butyric acids, some of your organic acids that come about. And anytime that happens, you either can dump it or you can wait for the smell to go away. But I don't recommend running it while it does smell like vomit. But that will go away, and sometimes it'll give some interesting flavors. But doesn't mean it's ruined, but it will take some time sometimes to go away, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get a sulfur smell, So it just depends on if your yeast gets stressed. A lot of times that's one of the signs that of stress is the creation of a lot of these odors and organic acids. Create you know manifesting more than they normally would, I guess you could say. Yeah, entertainment purposes only. Yeah, this is for people that want to, open up a distillery, distill at home legally. We talk a lot about wine and beer as well. So, but I can't control what people do. Where's Marcus, buddy? I ain't seen you in a coon's age. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. How's it going, Brian? See, shines. We got the usual suspects in here. I ain't seen no Marcus in a long time. How's my buddy doing? No problem, man. Yeah, it's fine. Sometimes no odors is good. That's a good thing. So as long as it's not putting off bad odors. But I did notice in one of the groups I was looking at earlier, and they'd broken their hydrometer, so they got a good starting gravity reading, but they broke it, and they were like, I don't think I can get one in before my mash finishes, and I think it might be done. Is the bubbling slowing down? I guess they had an airlock and said the bubbling slowing down. So what do I do? And if it's still bubbling, it's going to be okay. And as long as you got it under an airlock, even if you don't, weeks or a couple of weeks isn't going to be a deal killer for you. If you're not making wine. If you're making wine, it should be in an airlock. But if you're making brandy or you're making grain mash or even sugar wash, it's going to be fine. To sit around for a little while. I've got potatoes that sat a week longer than I want them to sit, maybe about a week and a half longer than I wanted them to sit, and I got this broken column that I got to deal with. So those things happen, and that's one of the beauties of winemaking and distilling. You don't have to get in a rush to do anything. In fact, it's better just to be patient, wait. But if you do break your hydrometer, it's a beer, so it's not going to hurt for you to drop a little, clear the grains away, drop your little shot glass in there and taste it. It's not going to kill you. People see that lacto and other things. And they're like, oh my God, there's no way it looks gross. Well, that's a beer. So taste it, and kind of familiarize yourself. I tell people when you get a hydrometer, it's great and definitely a must-have tool. But drop that hydrometer in there when you get your starting gravity, and then stick your finger in there or get you a little spoonful, and just sip it and taste it. you can wash your mouth out if you think it's got some germs or something. You hit the Listerine or whatever, take a shot of something good. But speaking of which, but yeah, it's taste it and familiarize yourself with. Okay, that's 108. Let me see. Oh, that tastes pretty sweet because 108 is sweet. When it gets up there, it's get pretty sweet. So you can taste the sweetness, and then when you do your final gravity, when it's down there to 1.000, pretty neutral, and drop that spoon in there and taste how sour, and bitter, it tastes. And it's, oh, that's definitely like a beer, that's definitely ready, and it's going to be fine. It's yeah, it's going to be okay. Okay, I want to make blackberry shine using real blackberries. Awesome. Should I make it fermenting blackberries or just use them in the thumper? Actually, both. You definitely want to, a lot of times when you put stuff in the thumper, it'll give it a nose. And a lot of times when you're drinking stuff, because it smells like it, you feel like you can taste it. But a lot of times, it's really, if you were to hold your nose and do that, be like, wow, I'm not getting it anymore. It's because your olfactory kind of mixes with drinking, and it's a combined experience. So making a brandy with the fruit gives you more of the flavor and the taste, whereas putting it in your thumper and infusing does give you taste, and it also gives you a lot more of the smell. So you get a little bit more of both when you infuse like that. So definitely make it is expensive using trying to make a brandy with 100% fruit and very low amounts of sugar, if any. It can get very expensive, and so it's best if you. That's why I tell everybody, start growing your blackberry bushes. Plant some apples and peach trees and all these things, because you can make them for free. And you get free resources. There are some places where you can get like secondhand fruit, or fruit that's starting to get a little fuzzy, or a few pieces are bad, and it's about to go, and they just can't sell them at the store anymore. It's perfectly fine to get you some boiling water, throw that fruit in there, clean it up under the sink first, clean it up, throw out the ones with the fuzzies, it's just pick the ones. Or if it's a big strawberry with a little black spot with fuzzies, cut it off, but heat it up to above 160, and you're not going to make a wine, so that really doesn't affect it. If you're making wines, then you can use your potassium metabisulfates, and that'll kill everything off, right? So, but it's best to use fresher fruit if you're going to make a wine. But for brandies, we're distilling it. We're going to kill anything that's in there, than botulism. But going to get a lot of botulism in your drink unless you start putting, turkeys and chickens in there like they do some of the tequilas down south. But so it's going to be fairly sanitary. You're boiling something in alcohol. Going to be pretty clean. So not a big risk. But yeah, using a lot of fruit makes a big difference, especially in wine, of course. But in your brand, it helps a lot. But yeah, doing the infusion jars, save a little bit for that for sure. And if you can get some kind of concentrated, juice, that helps a lot too, to concentrate that flavor, and muddle up some berries to add with it. It definitely helps a lot. But good question. Yep, they don't always smell good. No, yeah, I've had them smell like ass, and you know about everything. I've had the vomit smell. I've had with the butyric acid. I've had the hydrogen sulfide smell with the hydrogens and the sulfurs. And I get that more with dark fruit and with some stress yeast and dark fruit tends to and different types of yeast will help create more of that than others. But so it is kind of yeast dependent and maybe temperature dependent. I do know when I did the watermelons and I was at a pretty high temperature, I know it's not good. You definitely want to do those a little slower at colder temperatures. And there's a lot of fruits, especially that you really probably should slow ferment. Whereas grains, it's probably just the opposite, better at a higher temp. But sometimes people do stress their yeast with higher temperatures to create a lot of these congeners, to create a lot of these flavors that they can correct in the distillation. But that's pretty advanced. Corn, wheat, and barley, but not malted. Did you use the high temp amylase and the liquid glucose? Yeah, that's it doesn't have to be malted. Malted will give it, a lot of people feel it's a better flavor. I'm not going to say better because that's an opinion. Some people will prefer it without the malt. Many prefer it with it. So yeah, that's kind of an opinion thing, and you can try it both ways. And there's no must doing it one way or the other, as long as you got the exogenous enzymes to do your conversions for you. Yeah, I mean, and it's part of learning. It's part of the learning process, and becoming less dependent on the hydrometers. Once you can taste it, and especially once you repeat the same recipe, and you can kind of keep conditions the same way every time, and that's what you want to do. That way, you can develop some consistency. But yeah, once you do that, then you can expect certain results, and you don't really need the hydrometers much anymore. That's why I keep talking about, when you got the hydrometers, you can make your own recipes, right? That's basically what you do. You say, well, there's no rule that says you have to have 6 pounds per gallons of blackberries, or here, let me pull up a chart for you so you can look at it and also maybe use it for in the future. But it is in the groups that, I forgot to turn our little, is our banner going? I didn't even notice. Let me find the chart for you, and it kind of helps give you an idea of how much you're going to need. Yeah, streaming there. So blackberries are going to be towards the middle of it. It's 8.1. So about similar to a peach, to a tangerine, somewhere in that area. Cherries. So they're fairly sweet. With the blackberries, freezing them first helps a lot. You don't necessarily need a pectic enzyme with them if you get them muddled real well, because each little individual berry is what you have to have pop. So freezing them, a lot of times there's liquid inside each of those little uh, cells, and when it freezes, the water inside of it of course it expands when it freezes, and it'll bust that little cell open for you. So that helps a lot. So, and it gives it a real mushy texture. That's why a lot of people say, oh, you don't want to freeze blackberries if you're going to make jams and things like that, because it does ruin the texture of it. But for our purposes, it helps a lot. But there's a chart, and it'll kind of give you an idea of how much is there in each fruit. Yeah, definitely want to taste the mash and learn that flavor and get familiar with it. That way, when you do break the hydrometers, and you will, um, yeah, always get several. Definitely always get several at a time for sure. Because if you have one, you're going to break it soon. If you have several, it'll be a year before you break it, and it'll be like, why nailed I buy three? That works. All right. Supreme Court seems like they are open to weed users owning firearms. They mentioned how many founding fathers drank a lot, so distilling at home for personal use is going to be declared. We hope so. They did hear a case in the Fifth Circuit, and they were talking about making home distilling legal. I do want to add, for everybody out there listening, that does not mean that we can distill at home legally yet. Even if your state allows it, it's still illegal federally. The issue was, the federal TTB issues licenses to individuals. And then once they issue a license, then you've got to go to your state and deal with your state license. But the federal, pretty much once you give them a business plan, you send them the money, and they establish, a business name and address and all this information. They get everything, make sure you're able to do it right. Um, then they'll issue a license after you pay your fee and stuff. There's some legal stuff to go through, but once that happens, you can begin distilling legally with your state permits. But at that point in time, it's illegally to do it in your home, even if you get the government permits and the state would permit it. And they said that's unconstitutional, because that's just like saying, and the reason for saying that was, well, we can't tell if they're tax evading or not, and how much liquor they're making at home or not. And we can't really tell how much they're doing in their home like that. And it's their home, and it'd be a lot harder for us to go in. We have to get different warrants and stuff. Whereas if it's a business, we can just walk in freely. But if it's at home, we have to get warrants and things like that. It's a little bit different. And, the argument was, well, every home business can do that. There's a lot of home businesses that collect cash for what they do. If you run a lawn service out of your house and they don't know how many yards you're mowing and you're getting paid cash, right? So that's not a good argument. And they basically argued that it's actually taking away from the tax dollars that you could earn by inhibiting and limiting the people and where they can and how they can distill. So they won it under that, and so that'll have to get sent back, and there'll be some arguing over the next few years over that, but it's still not legal to distill at home without that TTB permit. So everybody thinks, oh, we can just distill at home now. That's Andrew, that's a good point. That's the distinction between whether it's moonshine or just something that you distill at home, paying taxes, right? Technically, I agree. That's what distinguishes moonshine from distillates, right? Moonshine is an untaxed liquor. It can be a moonshine gin, it can be a corn liquor, it can be a brandy. It's just moonshine. It all falls under moonshine because it's an illegal, untaxed liquor. That's technically what I call moonshine. Now, I don't know if there's a set rule or exactly, who decides on what technically moonshine is or not, but that's what I've always felt is moonshine can be made, it can be gin, it can be corn liquor, it can be brandies, it's sugar shine. It's, what actually went into the ingredients doesn't make it moonshine. Moonshine is because it's not taxed. It's illegal shine or, a home brewed shine now. So hopefully we can get it changed. So the Hobby Distillers is open. Hobby Distillers Association. I posted that in the militia and in the DIY page. It's free right now to join. I highly recommend everybody join because if they bring lawsuits and they win a lawsuit, the people that are members can get permission to do things that other citizens won't be able to do for a time. And eventually they're going to be like, well, it can't be just those people get the rights to do it. And they'll eventually argue it in court to where everybody will be able to do it. But there will be a period of time, years to many years, years is nothing when it comes to big constitutional issues like this. This goes back and forth for years. I mean, it was like 3 years ago that this got brought before Texas in the 5th district. And now it's just coming forward, so it can take many years. So yeah, justice doesn't always move fast when it comes to things like that. So joining that Hobby Distillers Association, not only, get you in a fellowship with a lot of other people, you can get some information joining the groups. You can have other people to talk to, like we talk here about distilling, and have some pretty like-minded people that has some experience, and share, recipes and other things, I'm sure. But yeah, it's be a good thing. Definitely a good thing to join. Yeah, proper temps. Yep. And I think, distilling is part of our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I will note that, strangely enough, George Washington was a distiller. He made liquor, and he's also the first president to instill a tax on liquor. Right, that was the first tax that was ever imposed on American, was a liquor tax. That didn't go over well if you follow history. Yeah, they always they always try to. Well, that's where they get a lot of their campaign money, on both sides of the aisle. It's just not one side; it's both. What's going on, Cave Daddy? Good to see you, brother. I'm doing pretty good. I'm gonna need me a little shot. I appreciate it. Oh, Wes is about knocked half that out. It's getting better every week. But it's not getting any smoother. That 140 is a bit stout. I need to proof it down a little bit, maybe about 120. Awesome, awesome. Now you didn't forget your nutrients and your oyster shells. Make sure that that's really important in your sugar washes is putting those oyster shells in there and a little bit of nutrients. That'll help things in a big way. What's going on, Mr. Pollen? Good to see you, brother. That's right. Yeah, I saw that comment when you first made it. I agree. It's not shine if you're paying tax on it. You can put moonshine on the label and all that and call it what you want, but uh, yeah, I agree. It's not shine unless it's untaxed. Then it's just rum or corn liquor or gin or brandy or whatever you want to call it, whiskeys. But it's not moonshine if you pay a tax. But I will say, also on the converse, because a lot of people will drink a jar that somebody made. That's one of us, right? And they'll be like, "Oh, that's good shine." And that person can get a license and make the same exact product, the same exact recipe, and in the same exact still. And people are like, "Oh, that's that store bought stuff. It's horrible." It's funny. Just because it's store bought doesn't mean it's going to be bad. But I will say that a lot of times distilleries and stuff for and they're there to make money, right? So when we do things at home and we do custom craft, craft distilling, we don't really think about cutting corners, unless we're selling it or something. But if we're just doing it for personal consumption and to share with your friends, we don't really put a lot of thought into, is this going to be a profitable mash and distillate, right? We don't really care. When you're buying that $50 worth of blackberries or watermelons to make a couple of few gallons of shine, it's not really economically that great, right? But we don't care about that because we're just, we're doing it as a hobby. We're doing it as fun and experimenting and just seeing and learning. So, but once you become a business, you got to think more about profit, and sometimes that can affect the jar. Absolutely. There's definitely it's all science, and we talked about that last week, and it's amazing how a lot of distilling over the centuries um, have created a lot of things, and how they didn't know about like malts. They didn't understand about the endogenic enzymes that were in the malt. They just knew that when they used malt and malted grains, they got more liquor, right? They got better conversions and more liquor out of it. So they didn't know exactly why and how. They didn't understand all the science, but they experimented enough and backed into it and figured out, hey, when we malt these grains first, I'll be damned if it doesn't produce better tasting and more alcohol. Now, better tasting is, of course, an opinion, but and it produces more alcohol. And when we add these to that corn, when we do just that corn, we're not getting hardly, much at all. And then once we malt that corn, we're getting a lot more alcohol out of it. So it's better to malt. So that's why they've been malting for a long time, is because that malted grain has those enzymes that are activated within the grain that helps convert more, right? Without that, you're not getting a lot of, there's just not a lot of sugars in that corn without conversion that the yeast can eat. So they've learned a lot of things. They've learned temperature. Man, I know when it gets start getting cooler, it takes a lot longer to ferment. So some of it was very scientific and some of it was just common sense. But they learned the science, and they didn't have to have all the formal education to learn what some of these things were doing. They didn't know how or why, and they didn't really care. They just knew that it did. That's all they needed to know. And then, once that was found, a lot of scientists were like, I wonder why that's happening. And then they did more research and learned more about enzymes and how enzymes can break, these glycosidic bonds and break down some of these polysaccharides into, smaller units. And then this other beta amylase that's in the grain itself helps break it down even further, into something that the yeast can eat. So, they kind of backed into the science of distillation thousands of years ago. It's amazing. And a lot of it was discovered by women, way back centuries ago when it all first started. Most of the people that made the beer and the wines and distillates and stuff were women, and they did it in the kitchen. It's just something that the women did traditionally. What's going on, Scott? Good to see you, brother. What's going on, Doug? Good to see you, man. Hope everybody's having a good week. That's good to know, Scott. Now, was this the federal TTB or was it state? That's right. I just love the hobby, man. I've always, since I was a kid, I've always, I grew up in Eastern Kentucky though, so where moonshine was a pretty common thing. You grow up in the city, it's just not a thing, right? But I've always, had a fascination with it even as a kid, and then got these Fox Sire books when I was just a kid and reading them, and wow, and learned a little bit how. And next thing you know, we're trying to make our own liquor, because we were growing up in Eastern Kentucky. There wasn't a lot to do, there we got tired of riding motorcycles and bicycles and jumping and skateboarding and stuff. It's like I want more excitement, and it was either girls or whiskey or weed. It's we were we were into everything. Right. Yeah. I mean, if you have to pay a little bit of a tax or get a license and do it, you know, it can save you a lot of trouble. And two, if you do sell, as long as you report it as hobby income, you don't have to say what it is, just hobby income on your taxes. They may get you for distilling, but that's not usually the big charge that they throw at you. It's the tax evasion if they can prove how much you made and been selling and volumes. So if you can say, well, right here on my taxes, it's hobby income. I never declared exactly what it was that was generating it, but it's on there. So, and it's here in my books, and they can't charge you with tax evasion because you actually paid taxes on it. And that's a lot of times the biggie that they hit you with. So, not saying do it or don't. That's just some advice. Yeah, yeah. Once you get everything under a standard, right? And climate controlled is a big step up, in establishing, you know, a mean, a norm. That's one of the benefits of being in a commercial situation in a building, is it's climate controlled, and you can year round you're distilling at 78 degrees, 76 degrees, whatever temperature that I'd say most people work in distilleries. I wish mine was that cool, probably a little bit warmer, but it's always that temperature, right? And you can regulate it. You can regulate how much, um, you know, animals, you're not having to worry about possums getting into your barrels and all these things, So, but yeah, it's once you establish, a mean and try to keep everything structured, want the temperature to be this, I want this, start measuring everything that you do, document it under wine and beer. Don't put liquor or anything, but document your steps and try to repeat these steps, because when you do consistency, going legal, and even with your friends, you want to be consistent and making it more, it's like cooking. You can't just go out and say, okay, I'm just going to make some goulash or some, and not use a recipe and have it come out the same way every time if you don't have it written down about what spices, how much of each, and whatever. It's kind of hard to replicate that without having some kind of structure, and that's the scientific part of it as well, is just having everything written down, and the amounts and the temperatures and everything definitely helps get your liquor more consistent, and that's what we're looking for. Because once you can get consistent, then you can start fine tuning, and then you can start trying some of the more advanced techniques of stressing yeast, because you know what the norm is. stressing it was going to deviate from this norm. This is what I get when I do that. And you've eliminated a lot of the other factors, so you know exactly what created that difference, right? So you can kind of tweak it that way. Oh, it's a great hobby. It's a lot of fun. Start with wine and beer. Once you learn wine and beer, you're just pretty much shy of pouring it into a distill, into a still or a distiller and making it. Except maybe with the beer, you're not going to have the hops and the expense of the hops, so it's going to be a little even cheaper to do. But pretty much the same steps. So once you learn wine legally and beer, pretty much legal in every state. Do check your states to make sure, but most of the states it's legal to do without a license. Some may require it, so you definitely have to check your state laws. And go to your .gov, your state.govs, and check the legality, or ask an attorney. Don't ask me. Don't ask Facebook. Don't ask Reddit. Don't, because the last thing you want to tell a judge is, well, a friend on Facebook told me, because they're just going to laugh you out of court. So you definitely want to talk to somebody that knows the laws a little bit better than that. Oh, did you get your chiller in? I remember. Now this was the quarter horsepower one, and on a 20 gallon, I think, if I remember right. How did it work for you? Hey, Ashley, how you doing? That's awesome, awesome. So Home Depot. I hope you got this still from Home Depot. Tell me if this looks familiar. They had them for like $150, and I'm hoping that you got the Vever football steel. Is that the one you got from Home Depot? Awesome tinctures. That's great. Well, we can get you going, Ashley. We can take you step for step from beginning to end, and we can include as much or little science as you need. But it's going to be the same thing whether you just follow a recipe and you know how to cook and gelatinize corn. You can make corn pudding. You can you can definitely cook a corn mashup, and adding the amylase is just like adding vanilla to your corn pudding. It's easy to do. You can stir it. So as long as you can, yeah, the football steel's the bomb. I've got one of those too. They're great. They're great for beginners, intermediate, and advanced as well. They work very well for somebody wanting to distill at home. You can do it on a turkey fryer. You can do it on your stovetop. I will say, if you're using a stovetop, you need to make sure that on medium high to high, that your stove stays on. It doesn't cycle on and off, on and off, on and off. It's not real good if it cycles on and off a lot. I've got an old Frigidaire stove and induction. It's got the induction on the oven. Old one. It's probably 20 years old, and it stays on the whole time. When I get medium high to high, it stays lit the whole time. It's a glass top. And I've got a Frigidaire stainless, newer, probably 7, 8 years old, and that some bitch cuts on and off, cuts on and off. So it's no bueno. But yeah, we can help you every step of the way. Got any questions? We can take it from the very get go, and tell us what you're interested in making, and we can go from there. We can give you amounts, tell you how to grind it, how to cook it, what enzymes you need to add to it, and at what temperature, and to get good results. It's we can save you a lot of trouble and a lot of frustrations, and that's what we're here for, is to make it a much more enjoyable hobby, because uh, there's nothing worse than getting into a hobby and you have high expectations and you keep distilling, and you're not getting much help. You're trying to figure it out on yourself, like I had to, and it's scorching. It doesn't taste good. You're getting the vomit smell. You're getting the hydrogen sulfide smell. You're not sure why. It's not really conscious about yeast selections and doing a lot of things, and there's a lot of things that we can help you over these speed bumps without a lot of frustrations, because a lot of people, they do it a few times and they're like, forget it, this isn't for me, it's not working out, this tastes like shit, I'm done. And there, a lot of times it's just a simple, you added too much sugar, or the temperature was much too high. or things like this that causes stress. So when you stress your yeast, it can definitely increase a lot of these organic acids that we were talking about earlier that create a lot of off smells and congeners and can make your liquor maybe not as desirable as what you were hoping. But yeah, we can help you. We can help you. So let us know what you're interested in. Are you trying to make a good corn liquor is a good place to start. After you do your first sugar, a lot of people start with just the sugar wash, and we can go over the sugar wash and, talking about adding the oyster shells to help buffer it. A lot of times when you do high sugar and high syrup type washes, the organic acid production, like I was talking about, tends to plummet. And as the alcohol content, a lot of times when people do sugar washes like this, a lot of times they'll get too much sugar in there, and the alcohol gets to such a high percentage that the yeast can't tolerate it anymore. So if you're using bread yeast, which can handle about 10 to 12, and you're putting, a gravity of about 2.0 in there, or 1.2, then it's going to be like, wow, or 1.15 or something like that. That's going to be much higher than what your yeast can tolerate. So once the alcohol gets to a certain level, start stressing your yeast, they start dying, they kick off a lot of off flavors, and it makes, it doesn't finish out, and B, it tastes horrible. So potato liquors, yeah, exactly what you give the hens. So potato liquor is pretty, it's not tough, but it takes a lot of potatoes to, if you're going to just use the starches from potatoes, you're going to have to use about 8 pounds, of potatoes per gallon. So if you want to do a 20-gallon mash, you're going to have 160 pounds of potatoes, which can get expensive. You can cut that in half and add some sugar and get by, and make the vodka. So that's a certain way that you can help cut some costs. I just happened into a great deal on some potatoes. It was $1 for a 5-pound bag, so I bought 100 pounds and did about 80 in a 20-gallon wash, which is about half of what I needed. So I added a little sugar, and I'm doing exactly what you're talking about doing. So, and it's not that tough. It's not. It's we can get you through it. But when you do that, you have to treat the starches in those potatoes just exactly as you would a corn or any other grain. Temperature is going to be a little bit different, though. You can gelatinize those potatoes at a lower temperature than it takes with the corn, but you'll still need some high temp amylase to break down those complex polysaccharides, and break those down into more simple oligosaccharides, and then you debranch those with some glucoamylase, and it makes it breaks it all down to either monosaccharides or disaccharides, which are things that the yeast can consume. And yeah, we can go into as much detail as you want on that, but it's not too tough. But a lot of times, sugar is a good place to start, just familiarizing yourself with the fermentation process, and also testing your still, making sure there's no leaks. That you understand how to tighten up the gaskets, and making sure you get your water temperatures, and making sure your distillate comes out at good temperature range, and kind of learning, getting your feet wet a little bit before you start delving into more expensive mashes, like potatoes are going to be. You always can't find those $1 for 5-pound deals. So but sourcing free, or low cost fruits and vegetables is a big plus. So if farmers, or there's certain places that sell pallets of vegetables and fruits and stuff that are going out. They're bad. They can't sell them at the store anymore, getting little fuzzies on them here and there. So you can go buy them for pennies on the dollar, literally, pallets of them for 15, $20, and then you can really make a substantial mash out of something like that. And with little to no concern, if you're going to distill it. Making wine's a little different though. But hopefully that's the still that you got. Yeah, the football still is great. It's awesome. Yep. Yeah. You want to clean your mash every time, and you can make citric acid is a good thing to clean it with. Vinegar if you don't have that, but citric acid is something that you need to keep in your toolbox. It's something you're going to use often, or you can use a winemaker's blend, which is citric acid, malic acid, and tartaric acid. And that's a winemaker's blend. So if you want to make wine, get that instead of just the citric. That way you don't have two different bags of acid that both serves as the same purpose. But yeah, I've got a little jar. Once you get done with it, you can put that in the jar and clean it off. Black's not as bad as green though. You know, if it's just black, that's fine. But once you start getting some green, you really need to get that green off there. You don't want copper oxide in your distillate. That would defeat the purpose. Instead of removing sulfides, you're adding another toxin in there. Sulfides aren't toxic, they just affect flavor. But if you put the green copper in there, then you're creating something toxic that's no good. So yeah, but a little citric acid in a jar with water and drop it in there and get it good and clean and take it out and rinse it. You're ready to go. You're ready to go again. And that's a good way to do it, you know, instead of having to pay for thousands of dollars in copper steels, which are great. Copper steels are excellent. They're definitely the best way to go, but they are expensive. And if you want to kind of cut that cost and just you're just doing it for a hobby, use the copper mesh and make sure you get pure copper mesh, no copper plated steel. That's horrible, horrible stuff. It ruin a run. But you can get it on Amazon and a few other places. But make sure it's pure. You know, put a magnet to it, make sure it doesn't stick, and check and read through some of the comments. And if you do get some of the steel on it, you know, make sure that you include that in the comments for the next person to read, so they'll know not to give that buyer any more deals. Yeah, absolutely. And that was, you know, from corn cob wine to going out and foraging, you know, and getting things. Awesome. Good deal. So it's not real expensive. You can get your federal license, and it's definitely the way to go. If you're like in Missouri, where you can do 100 gallons per person, up to two people per household, and have 200 gallons a year distilled. You know, paying a small fee for a federal license is a no brainer. You know, a lot of people, oh, that takes the excitement out of it. Well, if that's excitement, just jump in your car and go 140 down the interstate, right? Yeah, it's different. I would definitely, you know, spend the, you know, I don't know. You said it's $14. That's crazy cheap. You know, whatever. You know, it's not expensive. I didn't know it was that cheap, but yeah, definitely if you can, if you're living in a state that permits it, look through, you know, getting a federal TTB license and doing it at home. You know, they don't care. They just want their tax and selling that license, right? And if you're not selling it, you don't have to worry about the tax. You just have the permit. That's the thing. Sweet corn stalks, yeah. I mean, corn cob wine and stalks, I'm sure have, you know, starches and sugars in them as well. Probably not that much. I mean, you not as much, of course, I'm saying, as the corn, but check the starch content, you know, but you use your amylase just the same. Let me scroll up here. What's going on, Marie? I'm glad to hear that your surgery went well. Hopefully, the results from the test come back. Hopefully, those come back positive and they can take care of things. But we'll keep you in our prayers on. Science Talk, the Robert Murray Smith channel has a video on removing tannins from acorns with ethanol. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's what makes them so bitter. So a lot of times when, you know, people want to add wood, you know, and they're talking about adding a lot of chard and sawdust and stuff, and they dump it in their liquor and it turns brown instantly, and they're like, oh, it's good. Man, you're dumping so much bitter tannins in there. You might as well be dumping acorns in there. But yeah, that's very bitter, and that's also how you make the acorns edible. You know, is a lot of times they just use boiling water, but ethanol is even quicker to leach out all those tannins, so it makes it tolerable. I mean, they are edible, but man, they contain so much tannins. It's just hard to palate. You know, it's hard to taste. but very interesting. I haven't read that about the flower, but definitely interesting. And if you are in the wild and you do need to survive on acorns, just got to boil them quite a few times and keep leaching out those tannins, and you can eat them. It makes it a little easier to get them down. Star sand's an acidic. Star sand's an acidic uh, cleaner. It's not a cleaner. It's a disinfectant. It's an acidic disinfectant. So a lot of people think Star Sand's a cleaner. It's technically not a cleaner, but it does disinfect, and it does fine on your copper as well. And not too expensive either, because it just a little bit, teeny amount per gallon will help. But citric acid and vinegar work well too. Yeah, anything acidic like that would work. Even back set, to be honest, would probably work. Anything acidic, just boil that green off, and even back set would work for you, right? What's going on, Billy? Good to see you, brother. How's it going, Brandon? Good to see you. Hope everybody's having a good week. Mashing an oak barrel. As long as it wasn't leaking. I mean, I don't know if the char is going to affect your yeast. If it's got some curing properties that might affect your yeast. I don't know. But is it going to carry forward? Probably a little bit. You probably get some good char, flavor in there. I've never done it. I've never had barrels until recently. Most moonshiners, they never kept barrels around. They never did anything. They wanted to run it, mix it, bottle it, get that shit out as quickly as possible, because you don't want to have a bunch of liquor hanging around, when you're doing that. So most shiners never really aged liquor and barreled liquor up and kept it and went through all that. That's a hobby thing and a thing they do on TV, or something they do legally. Whereas most moonshiners, they don't do that. But something I've never tried. I've heard. I don't know if maybe you'd asked that before, or somebody had asked that before. And again, I don't know if the char would have any impact on the yeast health. If it didn't affect the yeast health, I think it'd be perfectly fine if it didn't leak. 1 horsepower. Now, how did it work? What is it? 20? Did it work out pretty well throughout the whole run? All that matters is the temperature of the distillate coming out. You want it to between 60 and 75 degrees, somewhere in that range, and that's fine. If you can keep your liquor that's dripping out in that range, that's optimal. You don't want it coming out hot. A lot of people say, "Oh, that makes it hotter." I think it makes it hotter because when you're drinking it, it's more volatile, and we're talking about the smell when you drink. It's more volatile, and when you're drinking it, you're smelling that volatility, and it makes it seem hotter. But it does affect the fats and how the fats are molecularized in it, and it's not good to be too cold or too hot for that reason. The setup I just showed you, this setup right here, that's around 250. That's 18 and a half gallons. They make that in a 10 and a 13, and they may make other sizes, but I know it comes in a 10 and a 13, and those aren't much cheaper. And people say, "Oh, that's too tall to get underneath my stove." If you have an electric stove and you've got the fan above it or the microwave, pull the stove out and you'll have room. I've had people say, "Man, I don't have room." And the stove will have a cord that allow you to pull it out and clean behind it, right? So just pull it out, do your run. And when you get done, push it back in. Okay. Sometimes there'll be a little thing in the floor though to keep it from topping forward. So make sure you get those feet in that notch back in there just right, so some kid doesn't come climbing on it and pull it over on top of them. But that's what those are for. But yeah, this is about a $200 to $250. I know the ones they had at Home Depot, they like a couple of years ago, they had these $150. Great sales, a Black Friday deal. It was before Christmas a couple of years ago. And they will put them on a good Black Friday sale and maybe a Memorial, 4th of July, whatever, day sale. But normally they're like 230 to 250 ish. and everything that you need is there. It's got the pumps, it's got, the canister condenser, and everything's okay. It works well for that. One of the major things about this setup is the tri clamp. So you see underneath this football where it connects to the lid of this still is a tri clamp. That adds modularity. So once you get that, then you can start attaching things like this, putting a column on it with a deflegmator, a sight glass, and you can see in that it's got a little cutaway of that spool on the bottom there, and that's copper mesh in there. And then you can see it's got a shotgun condenser on there, which is actually better than that canister condenser. And you can put cold water, and the deflegmator is basically a smaller condenser, and you can see it right above this sight glass there on the column. And you can regulate the reflux by sending, different temperatures of water in there. The colder it gets, the more reflux you're going to get. And the more reflux you get, the higher the proof and the less water, right? So the first thing to condense is the water. It's going to go down. Your alcohol vapors are going to go out. And with that, you can easily get to 185 to 190 to make a technical vodka. If you get the water cold enough and you run low and slow, easily. I've got one, I got 187, won't even try it. And I could have pushed it with colder water and easily gotten the low 190s. So and you can add that directly right onto the top of that pot, and you can add copper. There's a lot of Phil Billy and a lot of other people, Wayne at Ozark, a lot of people in the business can make a copper cap, like a whiskey cap for you. And so you can have a nice little copper whiskey cap to help take sulfites out and look more traditional. So that's a great way to do it. Another great starter for people is the old beer keg. You can pick these up for 35, 40 bucks. Look on Marketplace. It's just an empty beer keg. You're going to have to learn how to take the spear out without damaging. It's got the tri clamp on the top too, 2-inch. Whereas this is going to be a 2.5 on 18. It's 2.5. So you're going to have to get a little reducer. They got them on Amazon, 30 bucks, 20, 30 bucks. So it reduces from 2.5 to 2, or you can go up from 2.5 to 3 or 4, whatever you want to do, depending on what your budget allows. But most of these columns, that's a 2-inch column. And you can put that same column on this keg and run that. These columns cost about 100 to 150 bucks and somewhere in that range. Good value to buy it. If you buy these parts separately, it's going to cost you considerably more. It's going to be over 200 to buy all these individual parts separately. So it's a good bundle deal. I've seen them as low as 88 bucks or something like that on eBay, and maybe on Amazon right now with the Prime deals. You may be able to find something that cheap on there. I know Phil and other people, they carry them as well. But it's difficult for them to, inventory and sell this at the same price that, that China can. So if you want to keep it local, buy from your local people and pay a little bit more and help support them, that goes a long way. It means a lot, and it helps them a lot too. But yeah, you can rent a beer keg, and that's a pretty cheap way too. So you can buy that $150 steel, have about 30 bucks into a beer keg, and you're ready to go on that, and those are 15.5 gallons. You can put about 13 and a half, gallons in there. Don't want to overfill it. You're going to get puking, but yeah, it's you can get into it pretty cheaply. But if you start getting into the copper steels, then it goes up really quick. It's like the equivalent to a 15-gallon copper steel. It's going to cost you well over $1,000. So it's a big difference. No, that's not the one you got. Well, it's fine if you get the 3-pot. There are some issues with the 3-pot steel, and let me see if I got a picture of that. Oh, here's the reducer I was talking about that goes from 2.5 to 2. They're not real expensive. You can put that on there and we're in or go up either way. Let's see if I got a picture of a 3-pot. Pretty sure I do. I know I've put it up there several times for people. I don't know if I've saved it in here or not. Tell me. Let me go grab it off Amazon. Let's see. I can grab a picture really quickly. There's them Amazon Prime deals. Probably could Google it and do this as quickly. Oh man. Yeah, here we go. Let me screenshot that. Sorry it takes a long time, but it's not too bad. It's amazing what we can do these days. But if this is the one you got, this is the 3-pot still. The issues with this steel is the condenser sitting on top of the steel is no bueno. You don't want that thing on the top where the heat is. The thumper puke pot, that's fine up there, but you don't want your condenser up there where it's hot. You want to get that away from the steel, and that's way undersized. You need a lot longer worm, and you need a vessel that holds a lot more water. The only thing you're going to be able to do is get a water bottle like this, fill it about 3/4 the way or 5/8, whatever, with water, freeze it. It will expand, so leave a little room for expansion, and set that inside that coil to help keep it cool, because you just cannot run enough water in there to keep them properly cooled enough to have a distillate that's coming out between 60 and 75 degrees. So you have to work on the plumbing some. You're going to have to increase your condenser size. You don't have to, but it's going to be beneficial too. Let's just put it that way. Also, the gaskets that come on these, you see where the copper comes out of that out of the lid there. There's a gasket that goes in there. It's a PTFE plastic gasket. They're cheap. They're brittle, especially after a few uses. They're horrible. They break. They leak. And then you get problems. You get steam coming out. You lose a lot of production. You create a hazard. Not good. Fortunately, you can get bulkhead fittings. That little hole right there, you can put just a valve in, and just a simple gate valve or a ball valve, preferably, and use it so when you're done with your run, you can open it so you don't, implode. And right in the middle of that, you can add a bulkhead fitting with a ferrule. Let me show you a picture of that. But it's all's not lost, so don't get discouraged. But it is going to require a little extra work on your part. This bulkhead fitting can fit right in the hole in the center of that lid, and it will make it to where you can be more modular and use these tri-clamp fittings. That's 1.5 inch. You can get the 2-inch. I think it's just a little bit more. It's like $17 to the 16. Let me see, I can't hardly read that. Yeah, $17.50. So it's not that much more, but get a 2-inch and just have somebody or drill a hole right in the center. It's almost stamped in there already, right? And then use this bulkhead fitting, and it tighten it up good, and use a little bit of it's a silicone grease that's food grade, and to help seal. And you should never have to worry about it again, but make sure that it's sealed each time. And you can take a little cosmetic mirror or whatever and kind of go around it, make sure it doesn't fog up. If it does, you got some steam leaking, right? But there's a lot of things that you can do to this pot to make it better. But for the money that you pay for them, getting a good stock pot, getting a good stainless pot and boiler for that price is good. It's just that it will require a little bit of work to make it safe and make it work well. The little puke box in there, the little thumper, really it's not that great. I would just go directly into the condenser and not even bother with that, especially as a beginner. If you don't have the downcomer in there and you don't do it on the right side, it creates issues as well. So it's just probably best not to include that and just go directly into your condenser, but use these stainless flex lines to get condenser away. But it's best to kind of get you a 5 gallon bucket and get you some, 5/8 coil in the box already coiled up, and you can tighten those coils pretty easily and use spacers and make you a worm and put it in a bucket with a bulkhead fitting for that as well. But it's going to require a little work, but all's not lost. There's lots and lots of information out there. And if you have any questions, come ask. We can help you through every bit of it. I'm pretty sure Phil and them have probably most of the parts to convert. I know they got some of those gaskets because those crack a lot and they're pretty high demand for those little gaskets. But yeah, it's there's definitely ways to modify them to make them just fine. It's a good little stainless pot. Yeah. Once you clean it out, yeah, it'll turn green, and you get those copper oxides off and get that shiny finish again. And yeah, that's what you want. And then after 5 or 10 runs, it just gets to the point where it's just ratty and you can't get it good and clean anymore. Pitch it or recycle it, and start with another roll. It doesn't take a massive amount. You don't want to stuff it in there, and do not stuff it into small copper lines like coming out of this. Or in this scenario, you could put it in the little puke pot thumper. Basically without the downcomer in that thumper, it's just a puke pot. It catches anything that pukes over, and it's probably as good as for that as it is as a thumper. And as anybody that cooks or does anything like that, you can't boil water without it foaming up, right? So you can imagine what a beer is going to be like when you're cooking a beer and trying to distill a beer. So you're going to get foaming up, and when you do, it pukes over. It can cloud your distillate. It can not ruin the rum, but you're going to have to run it again, proof it down and run it again. But this can catch some of that. So if you puke, also if you have this, you can see any puking going on that sight glass. So you can see all the liquid going up. You can see the condensation dance on the glass, and you can tell if it's trying to puke up or not, or if that's good clean distillate going up and out. So that's nice to have, the sight glasses. Yeah, you can smoke your water. You can smoke your grains. You probably get as much good out of smoking the grains as maybe even distilling in the barrel. But I think distilling or fermenting in the barrel, that'd be, sure, it'll definitely add some flavor. Absolutely. Yeah, and if all else fails, it's a good pot for $80. You can't go out and buy a good stainless stock pot, for $80, but it's fine. It's great for the hobby, and it'll be great to learn on. Just a few modifications and a few things to set it up. Again, if you can just go flex line to flex line, get it away, get your condenser away, and use the frozen bottles inside, you can get your feet wet. But eventually, you're going to want to step up. And if you do get something bigger, like an 18 or 20 gallon, 10 probably going to be a little bit large for a thumper. But if you were to go to a 30 or something like that, you could use that pot as a thumper. But you can also, convert it to, pressure canning. You can, put drill a hole, and you can buy the pressure, canning, the little things that spin, and the I don't know what you would call the nipple that it spins on, right? The weight that goes 5, 10, 15, because this is what I did for mine. And you can buy that, and you can put a little where the valve would be. You can put a little pressure gauge there and make a pressure canner, get dual purpose out of it. So, but yeah, it's best to make you a little bit of worm. And if you use 5/8 and you use a 5 gallon bucket, you've got a worm that can graduate up to 15, 20, 30 gallon stills, no problem. And you can use the same worm. So as you graduate, you'll always have that worm condenser that you'll be able to use. That's really nice to have. Right. And there's a lot of beer makers that use barrels for making their beers to make the well, they call it I'm trying to think of what Alltech makes. It's the bourbon beer flavor stuff, and they do that in used whiskey barrels. I was actually helped come up with that idea years ago. No problem. So, any questions that you have, feel free to come here and ask them. We can help you. Um, I can pull up pictures. I can describe it for you, and definitely help you any way you need. Yeah, the 551 is okay. Hydrogen peroxide is kind of not a good thing. It's an accelerant, so it makes it almost too much. If you're cleaning like a copper steel, do not use it. Okay, I'm just going to put it out there. Do not use the hydrogen peroxide with it. Just the acid in the water is good enough. If you add that hydrogen peroxide, it activates it, man. It's an accelerant. It makes it go quickly, and it'll actually acid etch your copper. You don't see it by the naked eye, but if you look at before and after through a microscope, you'll see that it adds a lot of pitting on the surface. And what that does is it creates a lot more surface area for to come in contact with the air and oxidize, right? So, and you'll actually end up making it more prone to turn green than if you'd never used it before. So, only circumstance I would ever use that is if I just had it like on a scrub brush and I was cleaning a really stubborn spot that was just like had the green caked on it, just wasn't coming off with just a little acid or soaking. And, I didn't want to get in there with a Brillo and just tear the hell out of it. So maybe a little liquid abrasion would be better than a Brillo abrasion, right? So I might use it as a spot cleaner for a big green spot inside that I could get to. But as far as doing the whole thing like that, no, it definitely would damage the copper more. So unless you have a really, really bad situation and it's just, you don't have any other choice, it's just not working, no matter how acidic you get with the citric acid, then you may have to use that as an accelerant. It's an oxidizer, and it'll definitely make it go a lot better. Yeah. But as a last resort, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, so the oyster shell is the exact same thing you use for the chickens. And basically boil them, clean them up, and it creates a buffer. So as we talk about these organic acids getting created, as that happens, um, it gets to a certain acidity level and it starts eating away at this calcium carbonate, right? That's what these oyster shells are, calcium carbonate. So it starts eating away at those and it neutralizes itself, and it won't get up to 7, but it will prevent it from getting really, really low pH if you have an adequate amount in there. But yeah, they're real cheap to use, and it's great to have on hand if you have a garden or chickens. I use them in gardening too. The dust especially. It works great with peppers or tomatoes or whatever. Good deal. 1075. That's good. Yeah, yeah. The vinegar, if unless you have that really, really stubborn stuff that just, and I mean, if you get some antique copper and you open it up and it's just caked green and it's just so old and so bad, and it's just like, I put vinegar in here, nothing works. I've tried the citric acid, it's just not enough. Then yeah, you can use the peroxide to keep it, to clean it up a little bit, but just know that it's going to get green again. And if you can season it, that would be great. But it's going to be tough to keep it, from getting green. You definitely, when you have a copper steel, the best way to keep them from doing that is continue use. But don't let back sit in there. Don't ferment in them. Um, and you don't want acid sitting in there. Great to wash it with acid, but you don't want it to sit in there because it's just going to eat away at that surface and again create pitting in a larger surface area, which gives it a lot more area to oxidize. Yeah, it's great for tough spots. And again, if you got some really bad green and it just nothing else is working, then I recommend using it. But just for standard cleanings, I wouldn't. No. Back set, yep. Back set works great. Well, it, it depends. If you're just using a copper pot, when you have a copper pot, really you're not getting any contact with copper with the vapor, right? And that's where your sulfites are going to really come through. So when you're running through a cap or a worm in the piping in between, you're really not getting a lot of contact. So, having an all copper rig helps a whole lot. But there's so much surface area in that copper mesh that it's just as good or maybe even better than having the copper because of the surface area that you're forcing, that vapor into every little nook and cranny of that mesh. Whereas a lot of the vapors just go through the middle of the copper pipe and really and through the condenser. And once it becomes liquid, it really doesn't remove as much as it does in it as it would in its vapor stage. It will some, but not as much as it would in the vapor state. So it's not a bad idea, even if you have a copper still, to use a little copper mesh, especially if you have a brandy, typically brandies that have the. But anytime you smell a sulfur odor, you'll want to use it. Anytime you get that hydrogen sulfide smell, the rotten egg smell, the sulfury, you'll definitely want to increase the amount of mesh, or be glad you got a copper still. What's going on, Carl? Good to see you. If you want to do a grain, no corn, mash at what temp and how long to cook them? Well, we got a chart here for you, brother. And definitely, if it's malted, you don't want to go above 150 degrees, or you'll kill off your alpha amylase that's contained within the actual. Let me see, I went the wrong. Let me pull up this chart for you here. And it's got all the temps on it. You'll see this chart used a lot. And if you join either of our sites, it's going to be on there. But this chart right here will break down the temperatures, and this is your saccharification range, right? So if you look down here, it shows 175 as the limit. But really, if you go over about 155 on this in the green to the right of the green side, let me move this. Let me take this out for a second so you can see what I'm talking about. So if you look at about 155 at the edge of the green, any beyond that, and you're going to denature the alpha amylase and the beta amylase that are contained inside those malted grains. Doing an all malt's fine, or an all grains fine of any grain. Just note that if it's like an all wheat, you're going to get a lot of glucans. There's a lot of glucans in a lot of these, grass type grains. Your rye will produce them. Your barley is going to produce them. And they make a Sebflow and a Viscoseb that will help break down those glucans and make it a lot less gooey, kind of like the corn gelatinizes when you cook it. But yeah, you don't want to get over those temperatures if you're going to use the malt. Now, if you're using exogenous enzymes, which I highly recommend, high temp alpha and the liquid glucose, you're going to want to heat it up to about 180. You don't have to worry about the endogenic enzymes contained in the grains, in the malted grains, because you've got the exogenous to use. And you can heat it up to 185, gel it, and then start cooling it. Add the high temp at 185, cool it, and add your liquid glucose at 140, 20, or 100, depending on the manufacturer and the type of glucose that it is. They will, on your label, consult you with your label on what temp to add the glucose, because there are several different types that require different temperatures to be added. But yeah, it's no different. It's just, instead of the 185, 95 to cook the corn, you just don't have to gelatinize it to the same point with your grains like that. Your malted grains, they're going to pretty much gelatinize pretty quickly and gel over, and the glucans will come out. But cooking times won't be as critical, because it's much quicker process than breaking down the cornstarch. Yeah, not good in the septic tanks, huh? Yeah, I bet backs it works great. Yeah, you definitely don't want to kill the bacteria, but you can introduce more. But yeah, that's true. But it works fine if you got regular sept or sewer systems. It works, helps clean a lot of that stuff out of your pipes that you don't want. I never really thought about that. I don't have septic, so I never really crossed my mind. But yeah, that's true. But I guess you got enough water, and liquids going through there. It's going to help keep it neutralized and keep it down. The actual top, let me pull it back up here. The top on the lid. One moment. The lid going into the football is 2.5. That's a 2.5-inch ferrule. And the one going from the football to the canister filter is 2.5 inch. Now, if you're talking about the 3-pot, I'm assuming that's a 1/2 inch. I don't have a 3-pot, and I've never dealt with any of them, but I'm assuming that's a 1/2 inch. Maybe the smaller ones, maybe the 5-gallon ones might have 3/8, but I'm assuming most of those are 1/2 inch. But yeah, just take it to the hardware store with you if you need to, and check for fitting, and if you need to add fittings and get unions and things like that. And they're not going to know what it is, what it's for. Because threading, sometimes, the China threading is not always the greatest. That's why they send you 2 rolls of Teflon tape with everything you buy, because a lot of times those, I've learned just to get a tap and die set, and I've got tap and die sets. So anytime I get something, a lot of times I'll just rethread the damn thing, because it's, China's not the best at that. That's one of the things that really bother me about some of the stuff they produce. Those threads are not standard to us. Yeah, it's 2.5. Yep. Nah, I mean, I've got too many friends that also deal in the stuff. Phil Billy, pretty much sells everything that you can get from Amazon, or even if you want to order from Vever, he can give you a discount code. So yeah, talk to Phil. If y'all need anything, talk to Phil. He'll be honest with you. If he can get it, and get it to you, price it. If it's not too much more, get it from Phil. Help him out. He devoted his life to helping. He pays for this channel. And the StreamYard that we use here. It's $100, over 100 a month. He covers that, and him and Big Easy had a good job. Doing in the computer business, and they decided to do this. So, if it's just $5 or $10 more, help a brother out. And buy it from them. But they'll give you good advice. I mean, he'll even tell you how to build something, and instead of him building it for you, he'll say, well, here, if all you need to do is this, and he'll break it down for you and tell you. He's a great guy, man. So, nah, I'll flash up the pictures, but as far as doing that, I'll let people, I'll let them know Phil has it. You can get on eBay, Amazon, let people kind of make their choices there. But if you can get it through Phil or Wayne at Ozark, we got a lot of people that's dedicating, that's kind of retooled their lives and to go around this and making a go of it, so help support them. help support local brew shops, when you're buying yeast and stuff, instead of, you know, a lot of times, you're helping a lot of local people out that way as well. So, and local farmers, instead of going to Tractor Supply, for your corn, try to find a local farmer. You can get it a hell of a lot cheaper, and they're damn glad to sell it to you at that price, because they're selling it to, you know, people that bag it up to sell at Tractor Supply for half of what you can buy it from them from, and you can still save money over what it costs at Tractor Supply. So definitely, go to your extension offices and talk to them and find out who's making, who's got corn, and you don't tell them what you're doing, of course, but who's got corn, wheat, and rye, and all these things. So let me share some links again. It's a little after 9, so I can share the rest of these links out. So bear with me for just a minute, and I was just getting ready to get caught up. Daggone it. Okay, that's where I was. It won't take a second. There's not that many to go. It's slow. Very slow tonight. But we're having a pretty good night. A lot of good questions. Some new people coming in. Love that. And new people get interested, bringing more people into the hobby. And it is a great hobby, sitting around and making this. And the best part is sharing it with your buddies. You can tell them, oh, yeah, I'm getting ready to make some beer or wine or some shine or something. They're like, yeah, okay. You'll get the old eye roll, and they're like, I wonder what this is going to be like. Oh, man, this is going to be bad. And, you get a little bit of experience, and the next thing you know, you're taking it in, they're drinking it, and they're like, you did this? Like, wow. Then they want to know how. They're like, okay, this is something I can do. If you can do it, I can do it. What do I need to do? And it's a good thing to sit around and good hobby you can share with your buddies. And, compete who can make the best. That, that's always fun. That's always great. Because we love competition, don't we? And the ladies too. This is something, a woman can do as good or better than a man, because there's a lot of, don't want to sound sexist or anything, but there's a lot of cooking involved. And they tend to, like I said earlier in the show, they were some of the first beer makers and wine makers, because they handled things in the kitchen back in them old days, way, way back. The man went out and hunted and provided, and it was a little bit different than today. But yeah, so women were actually some of the first brewers and distillers out there. Interesting fact. And some ladies actually invented some of the Marie Bain and created some of the more interesting steel designs of our day. So a lot of ingenuity, and women have contributed a lot to the craft, and they continue to do so. In tinctures, as we found out earlier, and it's awesome. And that's another good purpose for the steels. All right, I'm done. Yeah, good old pump up, and actually with this, you can see this little black pump. It works fine, but you need to keep your reservoir pretty high. It's not going to pump it off the floor, 6 foot in the air into your canister filter, or into your deflagmator and your shotgun condenser, because it just doesn't have the head height for that. So you may have to invest in a little bit better pump. And I definitely recommend the, trying to think of the name. It's, let's see. Bear with me just a second, and I can give you, because they are the best, and they're really rated so good because of a lot of people in the marijuana industry use them for hydroponic growing, and they use them 24/7. And these specific pumps are tested, tried, and true, and they can run 24/7 for years without issues. I'm looking them up and I'm trying to talk as I find it. I ordered one off of Amazon. I can kind of share with you. And then right now, Prime deals, so it's a good time to order. Probably another year. Let's see. Can't remember what year I bought that. Maybe it was probably. Let me just search orders. That's quicker. There, Vivosun. Couldn't think of Vivosun. They got a Vivosun 800 gallon per hour, which is more than you need, but it has a good head height and it's adjustable and it's good and quiet and they last forever if you treat them good. People in the marijuana industry that do the hydroponics thing, they've tested these out right now. $19 for that. It's a great deal. It's less than I paid. Not Prime deals, but really good pond pumps, and they are adjustable, which is very important. And they come with 3 different size plugs, so whatever size hose you're running, you're probably pretty much going to be able to screw in the right one, and it worked for you. And again, right now is a good time to buy them if you want one off Amazon. It's the Vivosun. It's green, and I guess I'll give you a little picture of it. It is. I like doing pictures in case y'all didn't notice. It's pictures worth 1,000 words. So I do try to use a lot of pictures and illustrations to help educate, because it's just so much easier to show people what you're talking about if they can see a picture. And this one right here is this is the one I got, and it's great. Got a long plug. Got plenty of cord there, and you can see it's got 3 different sizes, 4 different size hoses. And on the very front of it, you can see where it's adjustable. So excellent pump for sure. Very good pump. Glad you brought that up, and I forgot to put the text back up there. Yeah, you definitely don't, especially the 3-pot. You just go low and slow, and with that undersized condenser, you definitely want to go slowly, because it's not going to handle a lot of speed. I had somebody in the groups just a couple of weeks ago asking, is steam supposed to be coming out in the end? Because they couldn't keep it regulated. They were running the pot hot, and they just couldn't keep cold enough water in there, because it gets hot so quickly to condense it well. They didn't know the trick to add ice, or, just fill up a bunch of these. Don't go buy bags of ice. That gets so expensive. Just fill these up, put them in your freezer. Sometimes it'll split these after a while, reusing them. Milk jugs work well too if you want to use milk jugs in a larger reservoir, cooler, or whatever, to keep your water cool that you dump that little pond pump in. You can recirculate it and regulate it, and just keep adding the ice blocks from your milk jugs or from the smaller blocks if you have a smaller setup. But yeah, that works until you can get you a larger condenser. Now, the larger the flake, they call it a flake that you put the worms in, it's called a flake stand. So the larger the flake, the easier it is to regulate the temperature, because you've got a larger heat sink, right? So just keep that in mind. Justin, what's going on, Mr. Meredith? Good to see you, brother. Hope you're doing well. I'm a little bit behind. You probably said hi 20, 30 minutes ago, and I'm sorry. I'm a little bit behind. I had to share those links, and I got a little behind there, but good to see you, brother. Yeah, I'd say he's ready for it, man. He's a child of the corn out there, man. He's Malachi. Hope you're doing good, man. Big cap or small cap? Big caps will condense more. So your steam, the distillate coming off your steel, the vapors have a larger area to condense. So the larger the cap, like the old Kentucky caps, had quite a bit of condensation going on with those. They call that passive condensation. But the larger the cap, the more condensing. So it'll be a little bit higher proof. And the smaller the cap, you'll get less condensing, and then the proof will generally be a little lower. Flavor, a lot of people, talk about the flavor. So a little lower proof means a little bit more water carried over, lower, proof as a result. But a lot of times that water will carry some flavor that the liquor might not carry. So, it depends on what you got and how you're doing it. But for brandies, it might be a little better for a smaller cap, larger cap for like whiskeys and things of that nature. But the biggest difference is the amount of passive condensation that goes on. And look also the lin arm that comes off of it. Sometimes the lin arm will slant upwards. And if it's slanting upwards, more will condense and roll back into the still, right? So you get more condensation that way. So the proof tends to be higher if the lin arm is pointing up, or if it's straight out, it's kind of 50-50. It'd be a little bit of both. You're not getting too much condensation and you're getting more water through. But if it's pointed down like the Kentucky caps do, then you're going to get less condensation and more water and a little bit more flavor. Yeah. All right, JJ, good to see you, brother. Have a great week. We'll see you Saturday, my friend. Later, bro. Okay, did a stripping around on some apple wine and was surprised it didn't have apple flavor coming off the football still. If I use apple juice to proof it down and do a spirit run, can I expect some apple? Part of the distillation process is to get rid of impurities. Unfortunately, when we distill alcohol, it gets rid of the impurities, which a lot of times is the flavors that we want it to carry over. So you're actually trying to defeat the distillation process by carrying flavors, whereas normally, it takes a lot of them out, and it does. And the more delicate and light the flavor, like a pear, a lot of times the more it will remove. So infusing works. Infusion is a good tool. Cutting up, if you have the football steel, it's got that little mesh inside the cap. If you look inside that football cap, you can see that there's a metal screening mesh in the bottom of that. You can cut apples up and put apples inside that. Inside, you can fill that whole football full of cut up apples, right? And that will help and increase some flavor. You can take off the canister condenser, and you can go into a diffuser and infuser to where you can infuse some, you can get apple juice concentrates and put in there and get a lot more of that, running those vapors through. It'll pick up more and more of that flavor, and that'll help quite a bit. But if you're really looking for that strong apple flavor, just make some apple juice with your shine, and it's not going to be clear, but people get kind of anal about that. Back in the old days, we were kind of funny about that. Post flavoring. That was like a sin. These days, nobody cares. It's like, man, I don't care if it's post flavor or not. It tastes good. So why not do it? They've got a point. Why bust your ass and break? I mean, it's great to make a good apple brandy where you can taste some apple in it. That's a successful apple brandy. If you can taste the apple, you've done well. But what's going to kill you, if you come out 140 proof, if you still want something stout and strong, you can add just a little bit of apple juice to it to 100 proof and still have a good strong liquor with good strong apple flavor. Nobody's going to browbeat you to death like they used to. Now, some people will. You'll get a few old codgers like me. Now, I won't, but a bunch of old moonshine, oh, you post-flavored that. You cheated. It's not cheating. It tastes good. That's what I want to drink, is something that tastes good. So how's it cheating? I like it. I don't care what you think, right? And that's what matters most. You pass it around, people, oh, that's good. And it is. And so the new generation, they don't give a shit about that like we used to back in the old days. So if you want that extra apple flavor, you can put an apple in the jar and it'll still stay clear and you'll get some good apple flavor from that. But mix us some damn apple juice and smile. Don't worry about what other people think, right? Not if you're using infusers with concentrates, it's not going to be a big deal. But yeah, you don't want to put sugary, stuff like that in your pot. Now, if it's in your thumper, you're not going to scorch because that's heated by steam, right? And we know steam's not going to scorch things like it would be if they're on a turkey fryer or sitting on a stove or on a gas. So yeah, if you put it in your thumper, it's not going to be an issue with scorching. But yeah, don't put the concentrates in with the mash in there because yeah, that sugar definitely will scorch and it's not going to be good. But yeah, in infusion jar rigs or in infusers or in small thumpers, yeah, you can use those for infusing as well, and it works out real well. Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So I'm getting to you. Yeah, that's good. You figured that out. But yeah, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with mixing some apple juice and some shine. It will give it a little off color, but it tastes good. And who gives a shit? It's still 100 proof, gets you drunk, and it tastes good. What more could you ask for, right? But yeah, people are caring less and less about that these days. Used to, in some of the competitions we have, it'll be, no post flavoring, because we want to see how much flavor you can pull and defeat, like I was talking about, defeating that distillation process to see how much you can actually end up with. So infusion is a good way of doing it for sure. And a 3 jar rig works real well. Better than a 1 jar or just a thumper, having that 3 jars that it goes through and yeah, it does. It helps a lot. Yeah, you can use biscuit dough or paste. Yeah, absolutely. And with those 3 pot stills, you don't know how many of those I've seen people showing running, and that's what they've done. Instead of the gaskets, sometimes are hard to find, and it just started leaking. And they watched the show and they knew enough. They're like, grab some biscuit dough, let's make some flour, rye flour, or whatever, and pack it on there to keep it from being dangerous. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's the whole way of doing it. Your 3 pot beaver didn't look anything like it did. Yeah. Oh yeah, man. I mean, that's it's a good deal. For $80, like she bought hers for, that's a great deal. It's a good cheap introductory. You've got all the essentials there. You're going to have to rework them a little bit, so you're going to have to spend a little time and extra money in it. But you'll end up with something decent, and it's great for getting your feet wet. But to graduating up to once you get to a keg or get to something with that larger diameter piping, it just changes things. When you've got that small diameter, it increases back pressure inside your pot. And anytime you increase pressure, you're increasing the temperature, and it's much more difficult to control. And cuts are much more difficult to control as well because things tend to smear and come out all at the same time. Whereas when you go lower and slower, and with a larger, less back pressure, with larger diameter, you don't have to deal with that pressure, and you can control your temperature, and your cuts come off much cleaner. But yeah, I would definitely, if I had a 10 gallon or larger, I would definitely increase the size of the plumbing coming off of it because I'm pretty sure it's like half inch. And if you went to a 5/8, 3/4, or even an inch gets expensive, but 5/8 or 3/4, not too bad. Um, definitely helps. Got a 3 gallon distiller from Amazon. Is it one that's like the? Let me see. Does it look like this, Jack? Just smaller, or is it like an air still? And as far as making a peach rum, basically, to make peach rum, you're going to start with water, peaches, and brown sugar, and you're going to need a little nutrient and a good yeast. That's all you need, and you can make a good peach mash. As far as how many peaches per gallon, I'm going to say probably about 4 pounds of peaches to the gallon, but different recipes are going to call for different amounts. Let me pull up the sugar list again for you here so you can see how much sugar and looking at this list gives you an idea of not only, well, actually, I do have a list that tells you. Now, this is for wine making, which gets you, but peaches, let me take this chat away for just a second here in the chat. Peaches are about 3 to 6, so about 4 pounds per gallon of water will give you a pretty decent peach wine. When it carries over, if you know through the distillation process, I'm not sure which still you have. If it's the air still type, I'm pretty sure it comes off pretty much higher proof. So you may lose some of your flavor, and you're not going to be able to infuse on one of those. If it's like the 3 pot still there, the little puke pot I was talking about in the middle, you put that little down comber. It goes in on the side that's next to coming off the steel. Okay, so it comes off the steel and goes into that little puke pot, and then you had the little short copper piece, right? Make sure that's on the steel side. You don't want it on the other side, or it's going to ruin everything. So you can put peaches, pureed peaches in there, puree them so you don't clog up any of the lines with peaches. If you clog up the lines, you can get back pressure and you can explode. So there's dangers involved there. So puree everything down to make, I don't know how many times little grapes or something go into that plumbing, back it up, and boom, stills explode. Too much pressure, and they can start. Basically, these had the gaskets that go around the rim, and once it gets to a certain amount of pressure, it's going to shoot vapors of alcohol, steam down, and it's down towards the flame if you're running a propane, and it can become very dangerous, or on to you and burn you pretty bad, as other people have found, right, O'Sheen? So yeah, there's some hazards that you got to be careful, and you don't want to learn the hard way. And that's kind of a good thing that those gaskets do give like that, because if not, then it would just be a bomb and then it explode all over you and start a big fire and cover you in boiling alcohol, and that's not going to be a pleasant day for you. No, not at all. A lot of people have died that way. Awesome. Started this on Saturday. 4 pounds of yellow corn, 8 pounds of malted red and blue mixed. Awesome. 7 pounds malted dry, 11 pounds barley, 1 minute barley. Awesome. That's great. Let's see. 4, 12, 19, 11. That'd make 30. 31, so about 36, maybe to what, 15 gallons? 15 gallons of water, being about right. But if what you want to do, Carl, and I'm not sure how advanced are you, but that sounds like a great grain bill. But you definitely want to cook your corn first at the higher temperatures at 185 to plus. Gelatinize those, right? So you'll cook it 185 to 90 plus and I say cook it, you want it to maintain that temperature, whether you steep it, cook it, whatever, 185 plus for 90 minutes. That will gelatinize your corn. Then you add the high temp alpha amylase. Even if you're using malted grain, I recommend using it. You don't need as much, but it helps it make it more manageable. So you use that little high temp alpha, and it thins it out. You wouldn't believe how much it makes it watery and much more manageable. Let it cool. And then at about 155, again, we can go to this picture, and it shows here malted barley malt. So at about 152 is a good spot to add that and hold those temperatures for a while, and you can get the benefit of the natural enzymes, alpha and beta enzymes in that malt, and then allow it to cool. And then let's see, oats and rye. Rye is going to be probably the lowest. Wheat you can add at the same time. Oats you can add just as it's starting to cool a little bit. And then rye is a little bit even cooler. You can see the best temps here. Now the far right is the high temp range, and the left, the dumbbell looking ball, is the low range, right? So you want to add it towards the higher. It makes the amylase more active and more effective, but you just don't want to go beyond that little ball on the right. Now on corn we do, because most people aren't going to malt corn anymore. and go through the long, arduous process of cooking and trying to gelatinize corn at 150, 55 degrees over a long, long period of time. It takes 10, 12 plus hours, and you really don't get a good gelatinization even then. So it's good just to forget about malted corn. Use regular good, yellow dent number 2 or some good heirloom corn. Malt, cook the shit out of it at 185, 200, and get it good and gelatinized, and then baby the malted stuff. Once you get to the proper temperatures for those, then you definitely want to stay within those temp ranges and hold it for about 30 minutes at those temp ranges during this. They call it the saccharification rest. You can see here at the bottom, common saccharification rest range, and that's just when it converts in the sugars and gets a good conversion. That's the range that it normally happens. But now that we had the high temp alpha, the old powder is 155 when you added the old powder, and you didn't want it to get lower than 150. Very tight range to use for the powdered alpha. But now that we have the liquid high temp, it's so much easier. Just, I don't care how much money you save by buying the powder, don't buy it. It's not that much, and it makes life so much better, and your liquors convert so much better, and it doesn't affect the flavor. So definitely want to do that. That's right. Definitely want to keep it local, support your farmers, and again, they're so happy to see you, man. They'll load a pickup bed full. That you bring totes, whatever. They'll sell it to you cheap as hell. They're happy that you're there. They get more money from you than they do the big guys, and it's cash. Yeah, they help. It helps. What's up, Clint? Yeah, we missed you, brother. I'm getting behind. Not too bad, but definitely missed you, my friend. Propagating yeast. Yeah, we're going to try to get Amanda and Alan and maybe Wayne in on here and chat sometime. We need to do a little powwow on yeast propagation. Yeah, we're going to try to get them in here. We'll need to get them in here soon. Amanda's so busy though. I hate asking her, and everybody's tugging at her strings to do a lot of things. She's stressed here lately, but we'll try to get them in here and talk about yeast propagation for sure. Yeah, fountain pump's great. Yeah, those work great. And actually, fountain pump they're known for producing a good head because that's the whole purpose is to spray up and out. So yeah, those are great. But you definitely try to get one that you can control too. Controlling, you don't need 10,000 gallons per hour pump, right? So you don't want to start your pump and get her going. It doesn't require that much. 800 actually is overkill on mine. I cut it way back, but it was cheap, it's effective, and I can use it for other things as well. Well, he might not be able to say that on here, man. He might get us banned. Hey, mate, how do I make one of copper for essential oils? Actually, join our website at the bottom here. Join DIY and DIY Shine and Steel Building. It's a Facebook page that we have. And inside there are some templates, some copper templates for some 5 and 10 gallon steels. And if you're handy with copper and you're decent at following the templates, you can actually print these out or make templates. You can start with cardboard boxes and flats and cut them out and shape them and get them, everything sized up properly. A poster board works fine, and you can kind of tape them, and make sure you leave a little area for the seam foldovers and things of that nature. And you can do a test run with tin or poster board and make sure you got the sizing right, and then use those as templates on your copper, because you definitely don't want to just start cutting copper and trying to fit it by eye. But yeah, definitely. Let me see what I've got in my Let me see what I've got in my file here. I know I've got, well, I don't have my other computer on, but I know I got most of my files are over there. But let me see what I've got here for you. I know I posted some in the group page. Let me check there first. Well, let me look and see what I got here for here. Template. And all files. Yeah, here's a 6-gallon template for copper moonshine steel. I'm not sure if all these are on here as mini steel. But you can take these templates and size them up and down proportionately. But let's see what this one looks like. Oh no. Let me open that this way. Slides and PDFs. Your computer. Upload file. Template. Hopefully this will show up well. This is just a 6-gallon template, but let me see how this invalid type file. Are you kidding me? It's a PDF. Oh, it's processing still. Okay. There we go. So that's not what I was looking for. I actually have the template of the flats. So let me see if I can find that. I guess I should have opened that before I posted it. Just bear with me a second here. Gotta go back in there, template. See what others I've got there. Search. Shit. Yeah, let me see what I've got here. Template. Nope, that's the same one. Back. That's going to be the same one. That's, yep, looks like a lot of those are the same one. I know I've got, yeah, here we go. Something like this. And basically you can use this. That's the 12 by 18. And this is something that you can scale up or down, right? So you can scale it up or down to work. Let me add that. Computer upload file. Template. Okay. Okay, now let me get this text out of the way and your comment out of the way so we can see it once it finally opens. And boom. So, and there's actually 2 pages to this, but you can lay this down on a sheet of copper, trace it out and cut it. And it'll have your cap. That's your lint arm there. There'll be the cap, the bottom, and the rest will be your sidewalls. So something like that to help you, guide you, to give you a basic. There's plenty on the internet too. If you want to do a search on the internet, just type up copper steel template and whatever size you want. They may have one that'll work just fine for you. When making a mash with corn, barley, and rye, do you prefer 2-row or 6-row barley? Good question. Used to, I preferred the 6-row because I was using the powdered amylase. The powdered amylase is very difficult to work with. It does not convert as well as the high temp alpha. So I was using 2-row to help with the, diastatic power. So it had the extra diastatic power to help the conversion. Now that I can use the exogenous enzymes, I definitely prefer the 2-row. Has a lot better flavors. Now, this is a personal thing. Some people might disagree, but more people are going to agree, quite a few, that the 2-row has better flavor than the 6. The 6-row traditionally has been a distiller's malt for its diastatic power. It was never really all about flavor. It was about diastatic power. Now that we've got exogenous enzymes, we don't rely on that as much. So the 2-row can carry much more flavor. and we can use those exogenous enzymes and not really um, need the diastatic from that 6 row, and we can start dealing more with flavors. Also, even some of the crystal malts and some of the dark malts and other malts that have no diastatic because they've been denatured. We don't have to worry about that for those either. So we can start experimenting with some of those and not worrying about having 20%, which affects your flavor profile, maybe for good or worse. Maybe you want less flavor and less malt flavor, but you want some in there. So, you're not juggling the diastatic. I need that 20% to get everything converted. Now that we got the exogenous enzymes, you don't really have to worry about that. So you can play. It gives you a little bit more, room to play and experiment and try different recipes and different ratios. But excellent question. Well, 18 gallons. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's fine with the amount of grain that you had there. Around 2 pounds to two and a quarter. Generally keeps it manageable and does gives you a decent conversion. If you get everything converted, it gives you a decent gravity, I should say. Um, but yeah, two, gets you in the 106, 070 range, where three is going to push you into the 10, maybe 80 plus range. Talked to somebody here last week that, got almost 109 and I knew they had to be using 3 pounds of grain, and they were. So, but yeah, it's you can save a little grain and make it a lot more manageable by cutting that back a little bit. I found two and a quarter works pretty well. What's going on, Steve? Hello from England. Hey, we get quite a few people in here from England. Good to see you, Steve. Yeah, we get people from Papua New Guinea, England, Australia, all over. Yeah, I mean, Papua New Guinea was kind of interesting. I've never really, that's the wonders of the internet. But yeah, I never talked to people from Papua New Guinea, even in all my days on Facebook gaming and stuff. Had a lot of friends from all over the world, Asia, Africa, but never, I don't think I've met anybody from Papua New Guinea until that. But welcome. Hey, all right, Carl. We're here every Tuesday, 8 Central, and Saturday, 8 Central. So, I'm sorry, 8 Eastern, 8 o'clock Eastern time, Tuesdays and Saturdays. So, anytime you got any questions, want to sit around, chat, drink a few shots, hop in here with us, man. We'll hang out, chat. You can tell us about your success stories, about your failures, and we can all learn from our mistakes. So good having you here, man. And again, if I didn't answer any of your questions sufficiently, don't be afraid to say, well, I'm not exactly, you didn't answer that as well as I needed. Can you go into more detail or something like that? I don't get offended by that at all. That's 100% while I'm here. In fact, I get offended if you don't ask me. So if I don't understand or I don't explain something to your understanding, it's my fault. So call me out on it and say, man, can you explain that a little, more scientifically or less scientifically? Can you use some illustrations, anything? I'll try my best to help, understand, break it down any way anybody needs. But thanks for dropping in, and, join us every Tuesday and Saturday. We can hang out, chat, and bring your questions, and we can talk about what you got going on. Half a gallon a minute. Well, you're producing half a gallon a minute. Well, if the larger the still, the larger you can produce like that. Um, and it's a lot of people don't understand. They think, oh wow, that 100-gallon still, I bet that takes all day and then some to run. If you have it scaled up properly, it'll take just a little bit longer than a smaller still. You know, it's surprising because I've seen people run a 5-gallon still and they think, oh, it'll take 3 times longer to run that 15-gallon still. No, it doesn't hardly take any longer at all. If you go up in, the size of your piping and everything proportionally increases, it doesn't take that much longer, if longer at all. But yeah, once you get to in the thousands and stuff, there's definitely going to be some increases. Yeah, we got people all over Canada, a lot in Cali and the Pacific Northwest, all over the U.S. And really, man, I don't know. Not sure if we've had any people from Hawaii yet. A lot of some Alaskans, quite a few people from England, Australia and England, quite a few. A lot of distilling in England and Australia. Yeah, it's awesome. Irish, had some Irish people come in. Yeah, yeah, it's great. And I like it because a lot of times too they bring some of what they do, and sometimes I know a lot of people in England and stuff, they're not as familiar with doing stuff with corn. They're more into the all malt, single malt, and that type of stuff. And generally, you see them using more malts. So once they, beer makers too. A true beer maker, when you're making beer with grains, you're starting at a lower temperature and increasing it as you go, right? With rests as you go, protein rests, another rest as you go up. Well, when you start with corn, you're starting with high temps and working backwards, right? So it's a little bit different process than most are used to with the malts, and that will be the biggest differentiation is that they're not mostly aren't familiar with the using corn. But I love the corn. Adding the corn really adds such a good sweetness and such a good flavor. That's why a lot of liquors, generally whiskeys or bourbons have to be 50% or more corn. Whiskeys don't. They can be anything, but bourbons have to be 50% or more corn. But yeah, I love me some bourbon and wheated bourbon too. I like that sweeter bourbon. It's good stuff. And I forgot to put, oh no, we're good. I didn't put that back. I did put it up. Yeah, we've had a lot of good questions, a lot of newcomers. That's great to see. I definitely want to get it out there. The streamer in the bottom, join us. You can see Phil Billy stuff on YouTube. He's got a lot of videos on how to's, and he's got a lot of recipes and post flavoring type recipes where you can, kind of take some flavorings, mix it with some brown sugar, regular sugar, pour in your moonshine, and make a really, really good, delicious drink. So, 500 gallons in a minute. Yeah, that's a big, big steal. And that comes out like a fire hose. I've gone to big distilleries like that, and it's amazing. But yeah, you'd be surprised. Those big steels they'll run about as quickly as we run our little steels, man. It's amazing. But yeah, it comes out like a fire hose. Oh, you talking about your pond pump or your fountain pump? Okay. I was going to say, man, but I don't know, 500 gallons a minute. I don't think they put out that much at the big distilleries, but they do, man. They've got the one I went to has like a box that it pours out into, and you can see, man, it's like coming out of a three-inch pipe, and it's filling the pipe. It's coming out as fast as a 3-inch pipe will allow it to come out, man. It's amazing. But yeah, 500 gallons a minute is 3,000 gallons per hour, right? Yeah. So that's super adequate. Definitely don't need any more than that, brother. That's a lot. That's very high volume. Actually, is there adjustable? Is it adjustable though? That might be too damn much, man. I'd be worried about that some bitch coming off and just going everywhere. That's a lot of pressure, bro. Yeah, that's perfectly adequate. That's super adequate. 500 gallons a minute. I think it's right. That's 30,000, not three. I knew I was order of magnitude off there. 30,000 gallons per hour. That's crazy, bro. Yeah, that's damn. Hell, I've got one. I don't know how much. I've got a gasoline powered pump, trash pump, gasoline powered. I used to gonna set up and prospect a little gold with it and dredge. I don't think it puts out that much. Man, that's a hellacious pump. That's a pretty big pump. Is that a 220? That's a large pump. This button at the bottom, I've never seen that before. Leave studio. We definitely don't want to hit that button. But yeah, they're updating this software all the time. I enjoy it because I can do the banners now, and used to I wasn't able to add all the files that PDFs and slides and things that I can now. I can do an extra camera, so I could show something on camera while I'm doing something else. But in the past, we've shown videos and stuff too, and may do that sometimes on a Tuesday or Saturday if it kind of gets a little bit slow and somebody comes in with a question and it's like, well, let's watch a little video on that, and I find a good video online. If I find some, I'll share them. But I definitely enjoy watching videos, looking at pictures because it's I'm a hands-on person, so hands-on, definitely learning that way. But seeing somebody do it is going to be a little bit more reinforcing than just somebody telling you how to do it. Last used a bag ice to cool my water reservoir, and Dan went through 60. Yeah, it's crazy, Doug. Definitely just start freezing up jugs of milk. It'll save you a fortune. Milk jugs, not milk, but milk jugs full of water. Freeze those up and save those. If you got a chest freezer or something, if you don't, make room in the freezer because it'll save you a bunch of money because it gets expensive. Everybody started that way. And they're like, "Whoa, this is too much, man. I've spent X amount of dollars just on ice, and I probably could have just gone to the liquor store and bought this for that." So, yeah, start doing milk jug ice, and that definitely will save a bundle. Oh, I see. All right. I was gonna say, man, that's tremendous. That's a big pump. Uh-oh, what's happening? Yeah, yeah. Just get you some milk jugs and freeze those up. 2 liters work well too. Anything like that works great. That's good. Yeah, any pump that you get, you definitely want to get it adjustable. That way you can adjust the flow, not just going into your condenser, but your deflegmator, and you can help, kind of dial in the temperature of, especially when you got a closed flake. Now, when you got a worm in a bucket, you're limited to how much can come in. You can't put any more in than can drain off at a given time, right? Or it's just going to overflow. On the football steel, you have the canister filter. Let me show you this canister filter on the side. So no matter how much you force in on the bottom, it's going to force it out at the top, right? And you're not going to get leaks. So you can actually increase the flow more so than you could ever in a condenser like that. See, you push so much in that, there's only so much can come out of that little valve on the top. Why they put a valve there, I have no clue. Because you definitely don't need to adjust the valve. You definitely adjust the inflow, not the outflow. But your outflow should be actually larger than the inflow. That way you can increase and get more flow into there, which is another problem with these. But once you have a canister, you can force water in and you can get much more cooling capacity that way because you're forcing more, cool water in. It's the same on a shotgun condenser or a Liebig condenser. They're also shelled up, considered a shell type condenser, and you can, increase the amount of water going in them and increase your cooling capacity drastically. So that's a big plus. Yeah, yeah, those help a lot too. We use those in the coolers. Yeah, yeah, those are definitely good. Yeah, a lot of times my mom got these Omaha steaks and all this stuff, and they would always put those in there. Eventually started using dry ice, but yeah, they got a lot of those packs and a lot of the Morgan and David stuff. Not Morgan and David, but something that's different fruits and stuff they send you and meats and stuff. And they always have those frozen gel packs in there. Yeah, we got a bunch of those we save. Definitely, if you get those, save them. They're reusable and they come in very handy. But yeah, that and just milk jugs if you can. I know it does take up a lot of freezer space, but I got several freezers, so it's not a big problem for me. But if you do have limited space, you can do 2 liters or just the small, water bottles. Right. I was gonna say, man, 30,000 an hour. That's that's I don't know. I think that's fire engine kind of pressure. You could probably put a fire out, and it's definitely going to go a lot further than 5 feet. But yeah, I got you, brother. But that little pump I showed, they're $19 right now. It's a good deal. It's a really good deal. They're a good pump. They last a long time. Yeah, yeah, that works great. Milk jugs in a cooler with that little pump in there turned down. That's all you need. And take one jug out when it's pretty much all about done. Drop another one in with it, and you can just keep adding them, and works out real well. And that's what I do. Until I got my other freezers, though, I was doing 2 liters. It was a lot easier. Putting the door, didn't have a lot of room other places, but on the door, I could put them in. But yeah, for people that I was looking to get some stuff, I'm going to check on Amazon real quick here and see if Bever has any prime deals on steels. Hopefully they got the air steels, they call it a water distiller, but these little air steels are on sale for 55, 80 bucks. I don't see the football. Yeah, the football's gotten so popular. Let's see. I don't see any footballs yet. Wait, here we go. No, that's not on sale. $269. That's a little bit. I think I paid like 200, maybe got on sale 190 some, 200, right around 200 years ago. But I wish I'd have bought another one when they were on sale. But that distillation tower I was telling you about, $77.22. That's the cheapest I've ever seen them, and that's the 2-inch, and they're all the same. So good time to get that. Look up tubular distillation tower with sight glass. Now let me open this up here. And I will take a screenshot of the description and the price for you all. Never seen it cheaper. And you definitely cannot buy half those parts for that. Actually, that shotgun condenser is about $70 alone. And the deflag puts you at about 100, right, a little over $100 for that, just those 2 parts. But let me share that pic for you. Definitely get on that. If you're in the market, you're looking, now is the time to buy. You'll not find it any cheaper than that. $77. And they're all the same. They're all the same, made by the same company in China. Identical. So there's your deal. That's worth the price of admission to come in here tonight alone. That'll save you about 30 to 50 bucks because they're usually 100, 130 ish. You know, I've seen them as much as 150, but usually I think 80 is the cheapest I've ever, 88, like 88 was the cheapest I've ever seen them for. And that was on a sale. Usually around 100 to 120, 30 range. So 77 is a steal. I think I might buy another one just to get a few parts. You know, it's good to have those parts. So yeah, the elbows, you know, the 2-inch elbows are like 15, 16 bucks each. That, like I said, that shotgun condenser, you know, that's 60, 70 bucks. The deflegs, 40 bucks, 50. So the combination of those is usually what, you know, combined to make more costly than the whole part. But yeah, you're not going to find that any cheaper. So jump on it. But yeah, having that just for that shotgun condenser and that deflegmator, those two parts alone, and having, let's see, 2-inch elbows, a sight glass, which is generally 26 bucks or so, that large spool that goes underneath that sight glass. Yeah, that's a $20, $30 spool. So there's 20, 40, 150, you know, it's 180, almost $200 if you buy all that separately. So that's an excellent deal. I highly recommend anybody that's going to get in this hobby to buy that today. You can put that on a keg and make a decent little still. That'll be all you need. Fit right on a keg. You will need to get a special gasket from Phil Billy. It's flat on one side, ridged on the other to fit on top of that keg, because most of them have ridges. Most of the gaskets that fit these tri-clamps will have ridges on both sides, but for a keg, you'll want it flat on the keg side, ridged on the top part that goes into this column. You could probably get one silicone and trim it, but everybody that does that, it leaks and it messes up. So it's best to buy one that's got a flat side specifically for that purpose. But I am definitely going to tell you, I'm waiting. Not be what I'm drinking, but I turn the fan on. Hopefully I'll take care of that fan. It's on. That's not too bad. But yeah, that's really, you're not going to find a better deal. I don't know. Let me see. That's probably not free shipping at that price. Let me see. They're probably going to, $50 delivery. I knew there was a catch. So that's 120 some. I've seen it cheaper with delivery. I'm sorry. I didn't notice that. I thought it was free delivery, everything, but no, that's $50 delivery. That's 125 bucks. Nope. Never mind. What's going on, Gip? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, if you can. Yeah, I've seen some. In my pool, I have to use this ethylene glycol. It's a swimming pool type to keep the lines from freezing in the winter, and it's you also use them in a motor home to keep your plumbing from freezing. And those jugs are a lot heavier duty. So yeah, if you can get a heavier duty one, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Those actually work real well. I save them. But yeah, 2 liters work fine. Yep. Yeah, and they fit in the cooler pretty well too. If your cooler's big enough. Yeah, I can't believe that. I didn't notice that shipping cost. Yeah, you can get that cheaper. In fact, let me see if there's a prime deal on those going right now. Let's see. 99 free delivery. Yeah, this 99 for free delivery. The cheapest I've seen, it's like 88. with free delivery. But this one's 99 free delivery. Let me show you a picture of that one. That was $25 cheaper. I'm sorry, I didn't look at that delivery fee. I started thinking, I'm like, that's just no way. So they're getting some money on the delivery because the delivery they're handling, so they're taking some of the profit, making it look cheap, and then by the time you get it delivered, you're paying more. I should have seen that. So yeah, this one at 90, 88, I think it is 90 some. Yeah, most of these that are cheaper than that charge you $50 delivery, so that's a ripoff. Yeah. But this one is 99 bucks. So 100. And I will show you that one so you can find it. Just type in whatever you see in this description, and you don't have to type in the whole thing in the search, but that will definitely get you. But that's a great deal. And this one is 99. Yeah. But free shipping, so it's $25, $30 cheaper than the other one. Yeah. I was thinking, man, that's crazy cheap. Buy two. But yeah, $100. Like I said, 88 on the best deal going, and I don't know, this day and time we might not get those with tariffs and all the other shit going on. It's been a while back, so probably going to be about the best deal you're going to get on that. And they're, like I said, they're all the same. You can tell every one of them, they even use the same picture. Oops, sorry about that. Trying to lean forward to see who the seller is. Oh, just a minute. Yeah, that's a great deal. So if you can, if you want to, thinking about getting a keg steel or one of these Vever football steels, that's a great starting column to get for sure. Hello, Miss Tammy. Good to see you. How are you? Wait a minute. What are we talking about? Get Camus steel for 94, 13 gallon. What? All right, you got me Googling now. Camus, CANOO. Yeah, it helps if I spell it properly. Oh, so this is another maker other than Vever. Okay, cool. And is this on eBay or somewhere or where? Oh, okay. Oh, there's two M's. CMMOO. Now that's a 3-pot steel. Do they have the football steel for that, or the steel for a 13 gallon, $100? That's a good deal. And again, that's, in China they're all made by the same people. Vever don't make those. They just buy them from the factory, put their name on it, and maybe change the specs a little bit and have it made a little different for them. But yeah, that's just a different brand. But you can actually buy directly from them. But if they have the football steel, they may have it at a little discounted price. Cool. Doing good. I hope you're feeling better. I hope you're having a good week. Hope that hip is getting better and better. Boy, I tell you what, I remember 40 years ago when my grandmother fell and broke her hip. That back in the 80s, that was it was a big deal. It was a big deal, and they talk about, after that life expectancy goes down a lot. And back in the old days, after your broken hip, that's major surgery, a lot of major trauma, major issues, and yeah, but she lived into her 90s. She beat all those odds. But nowadays, man, it's so much better. My other grandmother fell more recently, and my mom fell, broke both hips, and she it's a lot different these days. But you didn't break yours, did you? Anyway, hope you're feeling better. Yeah, it's a lot better these days. Yeah, just the expense. It works great. Bagged ice works fine. It's very efficient and actually, cools it off really, really quickly, but it melts quickly too. Oh yeah, yeah, it's a great deal. Yeah, for a 13 gallon. Yeah, it is the 3 pot though. That with that 3 pot though, I will say you're going to have to do some additional stuff. We spent a lot of time talking about that earlier, maybe before you got on here, but there's some additional things you're going to do. That the condenser's not that great, so for the money, maybe getting the football still for 40-50 dollars more may save you a lot of time, trouble, and expense that you're going to spend fixing that one up. But either way, they work fine, but it's just going to be, take some extra time to work and to make it like the quality of. But that football steel is just so, um, it's just so convertible. So you can add a lot of stuff to it. So it's modular, right? Whereas the 3 pots, you're pretty much stuck to what you got there. But I swear by those little football steels, and Alan Bishop, he got one about the same time I did and tried it out. I think a little after I did, I started pushing him, and I was using some pretty unique setups and kind of tweaked his interest. And he grabbed one and he started using it. He's like, man, I don't see why everybody's dogging these, because a lot of people like, oh, those Beaver steels. I think they got it from the Beaver 3 pot. The Beaver 3 pot's got a bad reputation because of their small condensers and because those damn gaskets kept breaking on everybody and leaking everywhere. And then, people get frustrated if they can't just bring it out of the box and use it. They don't want to spend more money making it right. Um, but Beaver kind of got a bad name. And then the football steels, people hadn't used those. Most everybody got the 3 pot steels. And a lot of people hadn't, purchased the football steels, and night and day difference. They're awesome. He's like, man, I can't believe I know I wished I'd have had one of those when I first started. My God, it made things, I was using a pressure cooker and small copper coils. So, then went to a keg steel, which was a lot better, but still it was, love to have been able to spend a couple $100 and had something like that. Back in the old days, that'd probably been about a $80 steel. I'd have loved it. But yeah, they're awesome. Yeah, yeah. I'm getting a new chair. I am. I've already got it in my. I'll show you a picture of the damn thing. It's already in my cart. It's a good deal too. It's a gaming chair, and it's a really good deal on it. It's got a little massager in there, so you may hear a little instead of squeaking, you might hear that little massager going. But yeah, here's the chair I'm getting, and I know it aggravates me too. I hate to squeak. It's almost as bad as hearing a damn. There we go. Yeah, $88. That's a great deal on that chair. Some of those chairs that are not as well built as this one. This is built for large people. Um, a lot of those chairs are for e-girls. I did the sizing. It's like, there ain't no way I'm getting my ass in 18-inch, there ain't no way. So it's like for a kid chair, but you got to look at the sizes on some of these, because China, that may be fine for most China people, but it ain't fitting my big fat ass. So, but this one worked pretty well for larger people. $88, a good deal. But yeah, I'll be ordering that probably tonight. I've been looking at Amazon all day for these new Prime deals. You got to get in early because the best deals they sell out pretty quickly. Oh, it's just a fracture. Okay, good. We glad you're getting better. How would you start a blackberry mash? Can you distill them? Absolutely. You don't want to distill. Basically, you create a wine. So you're going to start out with a blackberry, muddled blackberry. First thing I do, freeze them. Put them in the freezer, freeze them. The actual berries, when you look at a blackberry, it's a lot of little teeny tiny berries all clustered into one. When you put it in the freezer, those all bust because there's water inside of them. Most of them will bust and release all the juices and sugars. So you want to, when you get done, pull them out of the freezer, you want to muddle them and make sure you get them all busted, right? So you get all the juice out of them without having to use any pectic enzymes. It wouldn't hurt to use a little bit if you wanted to use a pectic enzyme, but really you don't have to. You really need that with the meatier peach type flesh fruits. But yeah, I'll start with blackberries, and let's see, I'll pull you up a chart, tell you how many pounds without looking at my recipe and having to go in and get my books and everything. But this is a pretty good guide. How many pounds you need? Blackberries, 4 to 6. So I average about 5 pounds of blackberries per gallon of water. And then you're going to use your hydrometer, right? We talk about the triple scale hydrometer to measure how much sugars to add to get it to the right starting gravity. So again, you use those hydrometers to make your recipe. So start with 5 pounds of blackberries, and then make you some syrup. Basically, you'll take 5 pounds of sugar and a gallon of water or a gallon and a half, dissolve it in there. Don't scorch it, but dissolve it in there. And then you can add that sugar water and kind of balance it out and until you get the gravity that you want, right? But yeah, that's and that'll help you get a good 1070, 1080 starting gravity. But as far as distilling, what you're going to remove your berries from the actual wine. So you go into a secondary fermentation, you'll rack off all the liquids and leave all the solids behind, and you can press them, right, and get all the juice out of them that you can, and then you'll let that settle, and then you'll run that wine. If you have certain types of stills are jacketed, and if you had it like a jacketed still, which is a commercial kind of setup, or if you wanted to use a double boiler type still, I've got a friend that does that. Um, you can distill on the fruit or on the grain without the worry of scorching. You can't do that with that. Some stills have agitators to keep everything stirred up, so you can distill on the fruit or the grain. So you'd need something like one of those to actually distill on the fruit or grain. But yeah, that would definitely be the best way to do it. But it's requires some specialized equipment that most hobbyists don't really have. Good. And yeah, also in the group we've got. Let me pull it up for you here. Let's see if I can do that. And let me see. I think I can do that from here. Let me try. We've got what is called Stampede Stills. Back in the days, if you ever heard of the old Stampede Stills, they've got a decent little cookbook. It's not the best in the world, but they used to provide it with the stills that they sold. And it's an excellent little beginner or a recipe book to get you started. Got some pretty decent recipes in there and some good how-tos. A lot of different. Some are very basic. Some are more in depth, like I like to do. But it's a great starter. So if you go into our site, let me pull it up for you in here. PDFs. Where should it say upload? Okay, your computer. Stampede. And I'm not sure if they probably have some stupid copyright on this or something. I don't know. but they give it out free. So, and I'm giving them advertisement by using their name, so they should be happy. Right. And they've been putting them out for ages. Come on, man. Maybe it's not on this. Maybe it's not on this PC. It's on the other one for sure. No, it's not on this PC. Dang on it. Anyway, if you go to the group, we've got a file section. So go to the files and just type in search in the search box. Just type in Stampede, Stampede, and you'll get 110 recipes from Stampede. And it's got some decent, good little recipes in there, how tos, especially for beginners. And again, DIY Shine and Steel Building. Just request to join. Just say you're from the podcast, and we'll get you right in there. And in the file section, you can join anonymously if you want to create a fake Facebook account. I'm not promoting that, but if you wanted to call yourself John Doe and create a John Doe email at Proton or some of these new places that give you free emails, yeah, you're late, Frank. You've been working. You can join anonymously, so you don't have to worry about, asking questions and people look at you. Also, DIY Shine and Steel Building does allow anonymous questions from, if you want to conceal your identity, which would be understandable. We allow the anonymous posting. So my admins can see it, but nobody else. I'm one of the admins, and other buddies and admin. Me and him created that group, and so you don't have to worry about that. He's a good guy. So yeah, just type in Stampede and you'll get a pretty good little recipe book. And it's probably on the internet too. I've never Googled it. I'm sure it's probably, let me check it. Stampede recipe. Well, no, this is for Dolly Parton Stampede soup. Okay, we'll probably get a lot of that. Lord have mercy. I didn't know Dolly had a Stampede soup, because you'll have to go to 40 pages to find it. So probably the best place to find it's on the group. Dolly Stampede soup. I'm not tried that. Oh, you still at work, man? Nah. Time to go home, man. And it's almost 11. We've had a good Tuesday. Usually, sometimes Tuesdays get a little bit on the slow side, but had a lot of great questions, some newcomers. It's awesome. Love to see it. But yeah, Steve, jump on. If you're in Facebook, I know you're watching from YouTube, but if you're on Facebook, join us at DIY Shine and Steel Building, and in our file section, just type in the search box. You'll see a little search box and a magnifying glass to search, and just type in Stampede. It'll pull up that recipe book for you. A lot of other recipes in there. Slowly adding them. A lot of them have different watermarks from other people that have downloaded it from other people that have downloaded it from other people, and they're all trying to claim them. This is my recipe, and they just copy and paste it from somebody else. That's a bunch of crap. But it is what it is. So I have to try to go through and clean up a lot of watermarks and remove those with layers, right? It's layered on. I can remove them with a GIMP, but it takes time, and sometimes I'll just copy and paste and try to get rid of them that way. But it's a slow process, and for what it's worth, it's a lot of them aren't really that great. But the Stampede, I've looked through it quite a few times, and there's some good in-depth how-tos, and then there's some just basic recipes, this, and this. You got to know what to do with it, right? But yeah, it's yeah, that's awesome. Retired twice, huh? First time, what didn't work out? Or you had two jobs? I don't know. I'm trying to retire. Trying to figure out what else I can do for a hobby income, and I ain't damn sure ain't gonna be a moonshiner. There ain't no money in that. Think of what can I do? Guess I could build steels, that's for sure. I could do some steel building, but there's a lot of people doing that. I don't want to compete with my buddies. Oh yeah, we were talking about that earlier. You know, somebody's asking about cops in the groups and stuff, and I'm like, shit, there's a lot of cops that distill at home. They just don't talk about it, right? There's a lot of cops back home that buy moonshine every week. You know, they go through the bootleggers and, well, you know, and buy it every week. Oh yeah, that's funny, man. Run it by hand, huh? Well, I'll run it by hand as long as you stand on. You can you can be the one on the other side of the glory hole. How's that? You can be the glory hole man. Just back up to that. Run it by hand. Now, wouldn't you know somebody named Handley would say that? He's probably heard a lot of them Handley jokes, haven't you? Yep, you probably got cute at a young age. Yeah, old Handley, he knows how to handle it. Yeah, I can hear you, buddy. I got teased a lot. Growing up in East Kentucky as a redhead man, learned how to fight that way. They didn't tease me too much though. To pull out a can of whoop ass, they didn't. Even the ones that won, they took a thumping, so they didn't want none more either. I think I'll have to pass on that, Frank, but I appreciate the offer, buddy. I'll tell you what, there wouldn't be much money in that either. There wouldn't be much money in that either. I'm trying to think of a good little hobby income other than I don't want to build steels. Guess I could do got a nice welder and plasma cutter. I guess I could do kegs, get kegs and convert them and put these cheap ass $90 columns on them and get a keg for $30, weld some element ferrules in the side and a big 4-inch in the top, get a reducer, probably about less than 200 in it, sell them for about $3, make $100 a day, do a couple. That's still a hard way to do it. Gotta be other easier ways. No, I'm in Kentucky. I know I sound like a lot of Tennesseers, but I'm in Kentucky, brother. Old bluegrass. Making some Polar Blast, William Punch wine, has some potassium sorbate. Had to yeast it twice to work. Yeah, the thing about the sorbate is it doesn't kill the yeast, it neuters it, right? So that's why you had to use it twice. So it wasn't killing your yeast, they just weren't breeding. And that's better than potassium metabisulfate. So sorbate's much better. But the sorbate just basically neuters the yeast where they can't reproduce. So they do their thing and die, and then you just have to use more. So but it does kind of tend to get yeasty flavors, especially if you don't use a good clean yeast. So when you do something like that, try to use something like EC1118 that's a clean, neutral yeast that doesn't give a lot of yeasty flavors. Bread yeast would probably be one of the most offensive because it has a yeasty taste. And when you have to use a lot of it, it tends to overpower and give it more of the yeasty flavors than you want. It's great for making, don't get me wrong, it's great for making whiskeys with and stuff. Used it for decades. But if you have to use it like that, yeah, that's perfect. Fermento, and that's great. That's good. Yep, that'll turn out perfectly. Yeah, it's a good clean yeast. It doesn't give a lot of flavor, and it doesn't give a lot of bad flavors or any flavors. It's very neutral. It's a champagne yeast. Basically, it's a Saccharomyces cerevisiae ex Bayanus. So it's a little bit different. than some of the standard Saccharomyces cerevisiae, but yeah, it's very clean champagne yeast. It has a very high tolerance. It's great for starting stuck fermentation. Got great alcohol tolerance, good temperature tolerance, and ranges. Yeah, there's a lot of flooding. Had some tornadoes come through. Yeah, I'm glad my basement hadn't flooded, Lord. But my man, I had to turn the pump water out of my pool. Man, it's about filled up on me. I'm glad you did, Marie. I hope you're feeling better, hon. And I hope those test results come in good. Yeah, you take care of yourself, sweetheart. Yeah, anytime you got the sorbate, it'll work fine. It just takes more yeast. So use a good clean yeast to do the right thing. And that's in winemaking. That's it's used a lot in winemaking because it doesn't. The potassium metabisulfate Camden tablet, same thing, does have a tendency to give a sulfury, little bit of a sulfury flavor early on, especially if you don't age it, let it gas off. So what happens in the wine making process when you get done with fermentation, you want to stop fermentation, which for us, we don't worry about that because when stop time to stop fermentation is when we're putting in the still, so we don't give a shit. So when you're wine making, sometimes you want your wine to retain some sweetness. So you check your gravity. When your gravity gets to 1.010, you can add some potassium metabisulfate and just kill the yeast, but give it a little sulfury taste. So if it's like a dark grape wine, that's not going to be bad. A plum wine, it's not going to be so bad because those have it naturally anyway. But like a white grape or a peach, it's not so good in that, right? It's not going to be in those generally are something you get dry anyway, the darker. But like for the lighter ones that you want to keep some sweetness in, put that potassium metabisulfate in there at 1.010, and then it'll get 0.005. And before it gets to one and pretty much neutral, and you don't want it to get dry, unless you want a dry wine, it'll kill off. It'll the yeast won't multiply anymore, so they won't breed, and they'll die, and then you still retain some sweetness. Stalled at 1040. And that could be a lot of things. It's tougher, and a lot of times people think it's stalled and stopped, but the EC 1118 is good to like in the 70s. It's good in lower temperatures, so it's okay. But yeah, once it gets to a certain temp, it just slows down to where it's almost dormant. But a lot of different pH can cause stalled fermentations. So there's a lot of different things. But yeah, the sorbate will definitely not allow it to reproduce. You're going to have to reintroduce the yeast, and that's why. Yeah. The temperature will depend on the yeast that you use. Now, bread yeast or data yeast, 80s are perfectly fine. So it's a great summertime yeast. Like your blue agave and some of your tequila yeast, 90s. They love it. They love the warm temperature. Now EC 1118s and a lot of the wines and champagne yeast. Oh, you're probably asking him. Okay, but yeah, they prefer a cooler temperature. So most of your wine yeast and your champagne yeast like prefer the mid to upper 70s, right? And some even into the lower 70s. Now you have lager yeast that go even lower than that, for beer making. So if you have wintertime, a good yeast to get for your whiskeys and bourbons, if you want to do grains in the winter, would probably be a lager yeast, and it'll handle those lower temperatures and give you a different characteristic and flavor and something you may like, something to experiment with. That's one thing a lot of people say, oh, all yeast is the same. That if somebody says that, they've never really delved into using a lot of different yeast, because yeast, it makes a huge difference. It really does. You building steels? Awesome. Awesome, man. So you got your little welder set up? That's great. There's not a lot of people working with stainless. It's a lot of that comes out of China. So I know Wayne does, and he's probably the best. He's as far as working with stainless, there's not a lot of them that do it. So there's definitely a market there. If you can get your sheet pretty inexpensively, and you get pretty good with your TIG and make good clean welds, there's money to be made with stainless, but kind of hard to compete with Vever and some of these companies. So you're going to have to create a niche, maybe do some jacketed stainless steels and do some things that Vever and some of these other ones don't do, to kind of stand out. I think the jacketed, I know Wayne makes some of the submarine, the stainless submarine pots, and that's kind of unique. And he's created some unique agitation methods using air and stuff to keep the bottom stirred so you can distill on grain in those. A lot of interesting stuff. But yeah, if you're going to do stainless and compete, it's going to be tough, but doing something unique like a jacketed steel, and maybe looking at maybe the upper hobby, maybe lower craft would be a good place to target. That's what back in the old days, I didn't know a lot of the science and know a lot of that, Doug. And that's the first thing most people do, throw more yeast in it, and a lot of times it was most likely pH crashing. And I had no idea about the oyster shells and pH and all these things. I knew nothing. I learned everything the hard way. But yeah, a lot of times it's either pH or temperature. But yeah, nutrients, not having sufficient nutrients can definitely slow things down, stick them, and create a lot of bad flavors too. So, but yeah, we want to also coach people to use pickling lime instead of baking soda. Baking soda oxidizes a whole lot, but the sodium in it kind of can kill your yeast and stress them. So you're going to get some off flavors a lot of times when you use baking soda, whereas the pickling lime doesn't have the sodium in it, and it will increase the pH very quickly, where the oyster shells aren't going to do that. So if you have a low pH, you're just not going to throw oyster shells in there and immediately adjust pH. Not happening. But if you start out with them in there, your pH won't crash and get to the point where it did where you needed something else. That's the big benefit of those. All right, everybody. We're about 3 hours on a Tuesday. That's awesome. And I almost kept up. I did pretty well, I think, without Clint. Usually I have Clint in here and we can both kind of tackle things, and I can get long-winded with my explanations, and he can field a lot of the quick, easy questions that he can type or voice in, and help with a lot of those. And we work together pretty well, but he's busy, and I've been doing pretty well, I think. Kept up well tonight. But I had a lot of good questions from seeing some new faces in here. Love to see that. So definitely share the site with your friends and tell them about us, and get them involved in the hobby. And you all can kind of compete. It's a fun thing to do, and they'll definitely be interested once they taste some of your distillates. Once you get it down and start turning out some good stuff, it's a lot easier than you think. And your friends are going to be like, you made this? Wow. So it's very easy. So definitely tune in Saturdays and Tuesdays, 8 Eastern. Don't forget to hit that like button. And I'm going to give myself a shameless plug here. I don't do often, but I need to get 500 people in here, and I think we're over 400 now. So we don't need a lot more, but I do need to get a few more people into this group. Now, you will get a notification. This isn't a group like the DIY Shining Steel Building group. This is just the podcast page. I do stream to this page as well, so you will get a notification The militia posts a lot of their stuff on this page as well. So you'll get some of those as well. But it will hopefully, I've got 414 here now. I need to get over 500, and I think that'll help me on my shares in the beginning of the podcast. So it'll be a little quicker and easier. But if you can just go to this page on Facebook and just like and follow, it would mean the world to me. It would definitely help me out a lot because we need to get it over 500, and it shouldn't be too hard. But if you can, go there, hit the like button, follow. You can turn off notifications if you don't want the aggravation without leaving. Don't get mad when it dings when we do videos, because we do several during the week, and you may find some interest in some of the other ones. The gals get on there on Thursdays. They do different ones all week. Damon gets on there and does some, and Wayne will get on there, and Damon get on there and has some good, really good ones. Really enjoy the ones that Wayne are in. They're good and informative as well. He's very knowledgeable. So really dig that. But yeah, hit that follow button. And if you want to turn off notifications, that's perfectly fine. You can get the notifications from YouTube, which probably more dependable coming from YouTube. Every time I start the stream, YouTube ding ding, and then Facebook, I might get a ding. I most of the time don't. So it's probably not going to be something to aggravate you anyway. But yeah, go to that page and just hit the follow button, and it would help us out a lot. And we don't ask for much, but if you can help us that way, that's as good as anything, man. It really helps me out. So anyway, thanks for everybody for tuning in. Been a great Tuesday. We will see you back here Saturday, the 27th at 8 Eastern. Till then, everybody have a great week. Appreciate you, Nitro. Appreciate that, buddy. Everybody have a great week. We will see you Saturday. Until then, shine on. Peace out. Catch you later.